All right, let's now resume with our afternoon session of day 2 of the second PICPA Foundation and NACPAE National Research Summit and Conference. Let's all welcome back our host for this day's summit and conference, Mr. Mark Vincent Bendo. Sir Mark?
Hello, sir. Good afternoon, everyone. So, welcome back to our afternoon session for the day 2 of our webinar. We now come to the most awaited part of this webinar, the paper presentations. In building a culture of research, the practice of having a colloquium for paper presentation is essential. It provides us an opportunity for the authors to share the findings of their study and at the same time receive valuable inputs on further improving their work. Some journals also require a presentation in conference prior to the peer evaluation and journal publication to build networks among scholars that could lead to opportunities for joint projects and co-authorship. Before we proceed to our paper presentation proper, let us once again acknowledge uh, the the people behind this particular project or joint project. We acknowledge again the Philippine Institute of Certified Public Accountants, headed by the president, President Mr. Lope Bato Jr., the PICPA Foundation Incorporated, headed by its chairman and immediate past president of PICPA, Madam Evelyn Corpus, the National Association of Certified Public Accountants in Education, headed by its president, Dr. Florence C. Tugas. Moving forward to our next part, which is our paper presentation, Sir Alan. Okay, so for our paper presentation, we have lined up 4 particular papers this afternoon. So today we are privileged to have with us 4 authors who will be presenting their product or the product of their hard work. These papers will surely provide us sample applications of the research concepts we've learned so far from our resource speakers starting yesterday up to today. So let's now proceed to the first presenter. So, so our next presentation, okay, so let's have a brief background first of the presenters. So the authors headed by Dr. Cedric Val Naranjo is currently the chairperson of the Accountancy and Finance Department of the University of San Jose, Recoletos. He is handling taxation and auditing subjects and is also a tax reviewer of the Professional Review Training Center or PRTC. Lindy, Marty, John, Kevin, and Noemi are all students who are former students and are now graduates of the University of San Jose Recoletos with a degree of Bachelor of Science in Accountancy last October 2019. They are currently reviewing for the CPA licensure examination. Ladies and gentlemen, let us welcome our first presenter this afternoon, Professor Cedric Val R. Naranjo, DM. Let us all give him a round of applause.
Thank you very much for that, Sir Mark. Let me just share my screen. Okay, so again, good afternoon, everyone. This is again Dr. Cedric Valnaranjo of the University of San Jose Recoletos, and I'm very happy to present for you another paper, okay, brought to you by the by our students, and I was also able to co-author this paper. Philippine businesses are one of the many sectors that are affected by rapid changes in climatic conditions. According to the International Food Policy Research Institute, the global impact of climate change could still stimulate changes in international and domestic commodity prices, having negative effects on the country's overall economy. The United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization stated that changes in climate cause fluctuations in production systems and compromise food security because of this possible So again, our study is assisted in the Philippines. I am Dr. Cedric Valnaranjo, and I'm presenting this paper in behalf of Lindy, Marty, John Kevin, and Naomi. So they've said according to International Food Policy Research Institute, the global impact of climate change could stimulate changes in international and domestic commodity prices, having negative effects on the country's overall economy. Will this the phenomenon, the we have the changes in our climate? Okay, will this phenomena directly and significantly affect the financial performance of the Philippine Stock Exchange? Before that, let us go to some of our related literature. A study of Spiele in 2016 says that the effect of El Nino on stock markets revealed that a climatic condition such as El Nino phenomenon impacts the macroeconomy and the stock markets. Okay, so there is an effect of this El Nino to the prices of the stocks. On the contrary, Lausucci and says that national economies, okay, are insignificantly affected by these climatic conditions. So there are two opposing statements of these two researchers. According to Hilario et al. In 2009, says that El Nino Southern Oscillation highly influences or the ENSO cycle is the fluctuation of oceanic and atmospheric temperature. Okay, this is according to the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration in 2018. So this movement in our in these fluctuations in the oceanic and atmospheric temperature will affect the weather. Okay, it can either be a La Nina, an El Nino, or a neutral weather. Okay, it has its share in the positive and negative effects of environment on business. In one of the studies, okay, entitled Impacts of El Nino Southern Oscillation on the Wheat Market, a Global Dynamic Analysis, Gutierrez stated that a stronger and negative effect impact on wheat yield anomalies was observed from La Nina than El Nino. Here it was emphasized how important the extremes of ENSO cycle. So the El Nino and the La Nina. So these are two extreme points of the ENSO cycle. Okay, to the worldwide wheat market. On the other hand, a study on the impact of climate, okay, variability on rained cereals are not impacted strongly by temperature related stresses, but there was a significant effect of high temperature on crop yields during dry crop seasons. Okay, so the implication of this is that with the unexpected occurrence of ENSO, it is important to have adapted options and supplemental management practices to maintain the ideal financial performance of a business that is at par with the industry performance during the certain period. So we have to prepare for these extremities in the ENSO cycle. With these products are affected by the change in climatic conditions, a domino effect to the businesses involving these products will happen. The productivity of certain businesses affected by the El Nino or La Nina will now be on the negative side, assuming preventive measures were not implemented ahead of the occurrence of the phenomena. However, a study of Tak and Obilava in 2013 contradicts the idea of ENSO significantly, stating that it does not significantly affect some agricultural products. They concluded the effects of global climate or agriculture are not just affected by temperature and precipitation alone. This further implies that the accumulated effect of changes in climatic conditions are what cause impacts on certain parts of the industry. A study of Villanoyet et al. In 2011 shows how ENSO affects the marine industry. Okay, it states that, sorry. Okay, it states that El Nino positively affects the production of sardines since it showed that the highest landed happened during some El Nino years. This will cause the productivity of sardines to increase, thus increasing as well the profit of businesses involved in selling the product. However, This cannot be an indicator of whether or not industry performances of fishing businesses are also positively affected, since it only involves a portion of a bigger picture. Moreover, environmental variables such as the air, water level, and atmospheric humidity, as well as climatic variables measured indices, act as different scales promoting effects on the fisheries in the said region. Results also show that during drought, the accessibility to lakes for fisheries was more difficult, eventually stimulating fish activity and increasing productivity in the river environment. A study entitled ENSO Impact on Tuna Fisheries in Indian Ocean stated that ENSO is an important driver of interannual variations in climate and ecosystem productivity in tropical regions. Sea surface temperature creates the greatest role in determining tuna availability in the region, and further, it confirms that ENSO creates an impact on climate, tuna abundance, and production in the ocean, Indian Ocean. With the continuous occurrence of El Nino and La Nina phenomena, it is important to know whether or not the effects of this phenomena will be significant enough for the people in the business sector to consider this in their decision making and risk management. Most studies are focused, okay, on the agricultural side, like productivity, amount of harvest, abundance, etc. Okay, etc. Studies on correlating, okay, the changes in the climate and its effect to the financial performance are somewhat set aside. That's why the purpose or this study aims to focus on how this phenomena will significantly affect the fishing business financial performance and whether or not appropriate measures are needed to avoid its negative impact on the business. So let's go now to the conceptual framework. So we're looking into two. You have the ENSO cycle and the financial ratios. ENSO cycle, as what I've said, is a scientific term that describes the fluctuations in temperature between the ocean and atmosphere in the Pacific. So there are three phases of the ENSO. We have the El Nino, neutral, and La Nina. So the variable to measure no, the ENSO cycle is what we call as Oceanic Nino Index. This is developed by the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, used as the principal measure for monitoring, assessing, and predicting ENSO. So we have here, based on the ONI, the El Nino and the La Nina are defined as follows. So pag yung ONI is greater than or equal to zero point 0.5 degrees Celsius, indicating the East Central Tropical Pacific is significantly warmer than usual. So yan po yung, that is the El Nino phenomenon. If the ONI is less than or equal to negative 0.5% degrees Celsius, sorry, indicating that the region is cooler than usual, that is the La Nina phenomenon. For it to be classified as such, these conditions must be satisfied for a period of at least 5 consecutive months. As El Nino and La Nina events have real and profound effects on communities, businesses, and the natural resources, including our economically valuable fisheries and coastal habitat, the study focuses on the fishing industries which are listed in the Philippine Stock Exchange and use the data of their quarterly assets, income, and stock prices. These businesses are primarily engaged in tuna processing, canning, and exporting. So the researchers look at the company's respective return on assets and the price earnings ratio. So as we all know, the ROA, or the return on asset, is a type of profitability ratio that measures the percentage of company's net income in relation to its overall resources. It's the most effective measure to assess businesses' performance on how it can convert its investment in assets into profit. So we have here the net income over assets. Price earnings ratio The price earnings ratio is a financial ratio used in measuring the marketability of a certain company. It measures how valuable a company's stock is. It helps in letting investors determine whether a company is financially sound and offers a return on investment. It's computed as price per share divided by earnings per share. Since this data, this ratio are not directly available, so we computed the return on assets and the price earnings ratio based on the financial statements and other reports submitted by these companies to the Philippine Stock Exchange. The researchers have named linear regression as the most appropriate research instrument. With the help of regression analysis, the researchers were able to derive the relationship between the Oceanic Nino Index and the return on asset and price earnings ratio. Additional information such as the p-value and r squared was also garnered to determine the significance of the result and its predictability. Okay, we also use a correlational design, no, to explore the relationship between the effect of El Nino Southern Oscillation Cycle and the financial ratios using statistical analysis. So we determine how to measure El Nino and La Nina, that is through the ONI, gather the fishing industry rated companies listed in the PSE, stock prices were taken, and we have inputted it in the Minitab. So we have here the Oceanic Nino Index. As you can see, the one in red is the El Nino phenomenon. It's more than zero point 0.5, while the blue ones are in the La Nina phenomenon, which is in the negative, um, less than negative zero point 0.5. So we have two companies selected in the Philippine Stock Exchange with the Alliance Select Food International Incorporated and the Century Pacific Food Incorporated. So if you look at the results here, now the return of assets of the two companies, it is generally it's increasing, but there's a substantial increase in the fourth quarter during the El Nino phenomenon. Because during the El Nino phenomenon, as what is mentioned earlier, there might be challenges for the fishing industries on how they will catch the fish. Okay, more they will utilize their assets, okay, to still deliver, okay, the needs of their customers. While the price earnings ratio, as you can see, it is higher during the La Nina compared to the El Nino phenomenon in the fourth quarter, because during the El Nino, the investors will have doubt whether they will increase, no, or they will invest in the fishing industries. Again, this is derived based on our manual computation. So we have here the result of our hypothesis testing. So we have company one and company two. So as you can see, the coefficient there is mostly on a positive relationship. Okay, for company one, the ONI to the ROA is at positive, while the ONI versus the price earnings ratio is also at positive. Compared to company two, the ONI versus the PE ratio is on the negative, no, negatively related, because that is on the nature, okay, of the nature of the business of these two companies. It is important to note the p-value. Okay, the ONI versus ROA of company one p-value and the company two are the same. That's 0.193. So it means that we have to sorry we have to we have to reject, no, the sorry it is significant. The relationship there is significant, while the ONI versus PE ratio, the relationship there is not significant. Okay, so the ONI will affect our ROA, okay, while the ONI um it is an insignificant, no, relationship to the PE or the price earnings ratio. While in the R squared, as you can see, we still need to gather more data, okay, because the ONI is not just the measure of the ROA and the PE ratio. So it can be related, but it's not that significant. Okay, so therefore we can conclude that the financial performance of the companies in the fishing industry is not significantly affected by the weather conditions like El Nino or La Nina, but this can be used to learn the pattern of stock changes for the users because of the doubt of our investors, okay, during the El Nino or the La Nina phenomenon. Also, we have to look into the preparedness of these companies as they face El Nino or La Nina, because it will really matter and it can be reflected in their financial performance during those trying times. It is more on how they prepared, okay, on this phenomenon rather than on the actual sales, okay, or the actual volume of transactions during the El Nino and the La Nina phenomenon. With that, I end my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Cedric Val and Naranjo, DM, for sharing your research output this afternoon. At this point, we would like to call on our reactor to provide us with some key points identified in the paper. Let us welcome our reactor from San Beda University, Professor Jackie R. Moreno, DBA.
Hi, Mark.
Hi, good afternoon po.
I will share on screen, but I would just like to see, can we see also Cedric, Dr. Naranjo? Is his camera on? With the rest,
Yes,
hi,
ma'am. Hello.
Doc.
Yeah,
You know,
good afternoon.
it's really, well, since Mark already had given me the floor, I think I can do whatever I like, no? So, Dr. Cedric, I congratulate you. Since yesterday, I really was so impressed with how, of course, we expect no less. You have been a very beautiful presenter since yesterday, and I really admire your way to articulate your findings also. And what I admired the most in your presentation is how you are able to compact or compress your presentation of the review of related literature that made everything interesting. So I would like to give you a few comments. So if you must, but it's more of how I just love the way your students had also come up with this interesting paper. You know, when I got this assignment to be the reactor, I was thinking, how will I do this? And how will I be able to equal the efforts that your students and you have put into this paper? So I would give it a try, Dr. Naranjo. So to start off with the title, of course, I would like to integrate also what Dr. Ochotorena had mentioned earlier. She mentioned that the title should be as interesting and it should not be including any jargon. But you know, when you mention here, it's an analysis on the effect of ENSO cycle to the profitability and marketability. Um, of course, the ENSO there may be kind of technical, but it did not ward me off or turned me off as a co-researcher or a fellow researcher here, because you were so smart now in including profitability and marketability in the title that made it more interesting for other researchers and even students and even other CPAs around to get a look into your paper. So medyo yun lang dun sa technical, baka matakot ka, no? Pero kasi when you included, uy, who is not interested with profitability? Diba? Who is not interested with marketability? So smart move. So very good there. So it really drew the interest even if it was a technical paper. Well, I would not be recommending anything less for that because it's really what the paper is all about, right? The title should give a direction to where the paper is. And definitely you mentioned the right variables there. And there is nothing that I would like to ask them there because it's really there. However, what would be the, we would be more curious, no? If possible, or possibly in the future researchers, when you talk about profitability, it's not only ROA, and it's not only for marketability, the PE ratio, but this is something because it is readily measurable. It can be seen immediately in the financial statements because your students and you were able to really have your own way of computing. So it was a primary data that you made use of here also because you computed on your own the ROA. I was expecting that in the paper because when I saw the abstract, I was thinking, you just lifted the PE ratio from perhaps an investment advisor's study or analysis. But it was good that you put in extra effort there to have your own computation so that the students will really understand how the financial statements are being used for purposes of study. So I really have a nice understanding of how the works of the FS and your accounting students now were able to have this across. Now, I'm just kind of curious, although I know you wouldn't be saying anything on this, okay? Why? Well, I am just kind of curious, perhaps in the future researchers, because it was shown also in your paper that in 2015 and 16, it was the largest impact of El Nino, right? So I was just kind of thinking, although I may be guessing right now why you did not choose 2015, 2016, because you don't have any neutral and La Nina there. It's all El Nino, I think. So that's why you did not choose 2015 and 16. But in the latter years, wherein you have the interaction of all of the three, weather concerns or weather states of El Nino, La Nina, and the neutral, that's why you think that by 2017-18, that would be the best time to have a study on how they are related to your ROA and PE ratio, okay? So now, no matter what the result is, you may say it's insignificant or slightly significant, no? But of course, the honest researcher does not know that yet, right? When you put in much of efforts in your research, it doesn't matter really what the conclusion is, because the thing is, if you're an honest researcher, if it appears to be not significant, so now I know, right? So now you get the truth out of it, and it's not something na parang scripted na you know already what's going to happen. No, so this is really an honest research, honest to goodness research, and I like that. Okay, because it is a manifestation of academic honesty and integrity. And as so far as we're concerned, even if it's an insignificant, you say it's slightly, no, it's a small percentage of change, there is still something there. Okay, so no matter what the result is, more than anything else, if I were to look into research, I'm looking for the significance. Okay, so the significance of your research output is very rich. This paper did not disappoint me. If others will be thinking, so how will accounting be connected with this? You are very much right when you wrote in your paper, it is on risk management. Actually, it's on the advisory, right? It's in decision making, wherein, although now based on studies, of course, and so it's really a natural occurrence. So we cannot prevent that to happen. However, of course, they are saying that somehow, although it's not yet proven, that climate change may intensify the ENSO effect. Now, so then if there are some actions regarding the controlling of the climate change effects, then that can be something that you can work on also, and the company as well, definitely. So it's on the advisory, particularly the risk management, because since ENSO cannot be prevented, a cost-benefit analysis, of course, will have to be considered by the company as to whether they can have really an exertion of efforts regarding the impact, now reducing the impact of the ENSO in their company. Now, as based on studies, if it's forecasted right now, it can be forecasted 1 to 9 months before. So this is a good thing because at least you have time also. The company has time if they have a good resource of the knowledge of the ENSO. Around 9 months, they can prepare for this, right? So at least that is still something that they can work on. You know, this problem actually reminded me of the MAS or the MAS examination problem on the frost. Remember that Are you going to find ways on how to protect the strawberries from the frost? Or will you not do anything? And that's when the play of the factors now come in, whether it is cost effective for you to protect it. And what if, for example, it does not happen? Right? Because this is something which is uncertain. It's a play of the mother nature. So you really don't know that. So the question is, if you'll be placing efforts there, may mangyayari ba o nagkagastos lang tayo, no? I so appreciate your paper. Can you just see how I'm happy about your paper? So second is that it's very rich in significance. That's why I like this, because in the global scene of finance, whether derivatives are already being considered as part of risk management. And this can be considered as an exploratory point already, no, or a kick-off point for some of the students. Of course, maybe not in the Philippines, but it's not really mature here yet. But then because of our geographic location, then we may think that whether derivatives can be a good thing to study also by our students. Then I don't know whether you're able to consider this, but I also see significance in auditing, because if this is a predictive value, so if, let's say, for example, I'm an auditor and then my client is belonging in this industry, then I may have to get an idea whether they're telling me the truth, that their revenues are increasing or decreasing based on analytical procedures in the planning. So I really like this, Dr. Naranjo. Congratulations. I would just have to suggest, when it comes
Thank
to
you.
the paper presentation, the tables should be presented in a way that's very clear. Now, I really, the labels of the table should be, of course, clear there. So what is it really describing? So that, but when you get to really read, it's an easy read paper, actually. You will get to identify and interpret on your own what the tables are really there for, okay? So
Yeah.
this is a rich presentation. There are many things to look forward to. I really
Thank
congratulate
you
your
very
school.
much.
They're
Thank you
very
very
lucky
much,
to
Doc.
have you head the accounting department, and you will really push to higher level your students and your faculty as well. Congratulations, Dr. Cedric, and of course your students as well.
Thank you, Dr. Jack.
Thank you very much, Professor Jackie Moreno. At this point, we will now virtually award our certificate of presentation for our first presenter. May we request Madam Evelyn Corpus, Chairman of the BIGPA Foundation Incorporated, Dr. Florence Tugas, the President of NACPAE, and Mr. Alan Frank Silva to represent PIGPA, the present PIGPA Director for Education Sector, to award the certificate of presentation. So let me read the citation, or read the content of the certificate. Philippine Institute of Certified Public Accountants, PIGPA Foundation Incorporated, National Association of Certified Public Accountants in Education present this certificate of presentation to Cedric Val R. Naranjo, DM, University of San Jose Recoletos, for presenting a research project titled An Analysis of the Effect of El Nino, Southern Oscillation ENSO Cycle to the Profitability and Marketability of Fishing Businesses listed in the PSE. During the second joint National Accountancy Research Summit and Conference on October 19 to 20, 2020, live via Zoom, given this 20th day of October 2020, signed President Lope Bato Jr. from PIGPA, Chairman Evelyn S. Corpus from PIGPA Foundation Incorporated, and President Florence C. Tugas, NACPAE. So let's give him a round of applause.
Thank you very
Congratulations
much.
po, Professor Cedric Naranjo. We'll also award our certificate of appreciation to our reactor this afternoon. So the certificate of appreciation is presented to Professor Jackie R. Moreno, DBA, from San Beda University for her invaluable contribution as reactor during the second Joint National Accountancy Research Summit Conference given this 20th day of October 2020. Thank you very much, Dr. Jackie Moreno. Congratulations po. Let's now move forward to our second paper presentation. Right, so for our second paper, let's have a brief introduction of the author. The author is a CPA with more than 7 years of experience in the local and international taxation, currently a senior tax analyst of QBE Group Shared Services, handling Australian, New Zealand, and European indirect tax compliance. She obtained her Bachelor of Science in Accountancy from University of Santo Tomas, AMB College of Accountancy, where she also taught as a college instructor. She's a graduating student of Master of Science in Accountancy from De La Salle University of Ramon B. Del Rosario College of Business. For a while, sorry for the noise. All right, to continue, sorry for that interruption. She is a graduating student of Master of Science in Accountancy from De La Salle University, Ramon V. Del Rosario College of Business, which she represented in Birla Asian Family Business Case Competition Graduate Division, and won first runner-up together with her 3 other teammates from the DLSU MBA program. She was a senior associate in Reyes Tacandong and Company, having extensive exposure to tax compliance matters in different industries, and with QBE, she continues to expand her knowledge and experience in general insurance and reinsurance industry. To present her paper titled "The Effectiveness of Continuing Professional Development on the Enhancement of Certified Public Accountants' Competencies, a Convergent Parallel Mixed Method Study," let us all welcome Ms. Roxani C. Calixto.
Thank you. So I'll just share my screen. So good afternoon again, everyone. I'm Roxani C. Calixto, and I will be presenting my paper in collaboration with my advisor, Dr. Rodiel Ferrer. So the title is "The Effectiveness of Continuing Professional Development on the Enhancement of Certified Public Accountants' Competences, a Convergent Parallel Mixed Method Study." With the issuance of GOA Resolution Number 358/2016, which provides for the increase of the CPD unit requirement from 60 to 120 units, and with the subsequent issuance of GOA Resolution Number 254/2017, which requires CPAs seeking GOA accreditation to comply with the same 120 unit requirement, we have received a lot of mixed reactions from accountants and other affected professionals because of the change in the CPD requirement, and most of them stress that the new requirement would be too burdensome for them due to the cost and time that they will need to spend on CPD. Shortly after, PRC issued Resolution Number 2019-1146, which took effect last March 1, 2019, stating that the new CPD requirement shall be put in a transition period, and during this period, professionals will only be required to obtain no more than 15 units of CPD training in order to renew their professional identification card. However, most accountants know that the increase to 120 units was being implemented in accordance with the International Education Standard 7, and there are a lot of ongoing discussions formal and informal discussions with regard to our continuing professional development. And as a practicing accountant, I would also like to take part in these discussions, propose my suggestions and recommendations, but I want mine to be based on empirical evidence. And so the objective of this study is to analyze and determine the impact of CPD seminars on CPA's competence based on its perceived effectiveness in enhancing organizational and business knowledge, information technology knowledge, accounting knowledge, interpersonal skills, and communication skills. So the reason why I'm focusing my research on CPD seminars is because a lot of prior researches and surveys made in the past showed that most accountants earn their CPD units by attending conferences and CPD seminars. And this is the most universal mode for accountants in earning their CPD units, regardless of the sector that they're connected. So the study will focus on the accountant's engagement to CPD seminars and its effect on specific areas of competence. CPD's effect on competence will be assessed based on how it effectively helps accountants in enhancing the specific knowledge and skills set forth in the core competency framework for entry to the Philippine accountancy profession, which was created by the Professional Regulatory Board of Accountancy. CPD, on the other hand, will be gauged based on the degree of accountants' engagement with CPD seminars, and that is the number of CPD units earned by the respondents. The study was conducted in 3 parts. So for the quantitative research, we have applied the causal explanatory research design, and for the data analysis, we use partial least square structural equation modeling. For the qualitative research, we have applied the qualitative descriptive approach, and we have applied the convergent parallel design, which uses concurrent timing to implement the quantitative and qualitative strands during the same phase of the research process, keep the strands independent during the analysis, and then mix the results during the overall interpretation. Applying mixed methods was deemed necessary as it gives a voice to study participants and ensure that the study findings are grounded on participants' experiences. In order to allow integration of the quantitative and qualitative results of the study, the quantitative and qualitative results were organized in a format based on thematic relevance, and that is the impact of CPD on each of the 5 areas of competences that is included in the study. So for business and organizational knowledge, the results of the quantitative analysis showed that CPD engagement does not significantly impact the accountant's perceived effectiveness of CPD in enhancing business and organizational knowledge. So some of the participants mentioned that CPD's topics were too broad and general. One participant mentioned that CPD is somewhat ineffective in enhancing this area because most of the CPD training is really just more on continuing updates on the standards. Also, another participant emphasized that business and organizational knowledge includes topics which are something that we appreciate in our day-to-day work, and it would really be tough for us to appreciate topics, for example, risk management in one sitting. And as you may have seen on the screen, some of the participants belong to specialized industries like banks, financial institution, other financial institutions, insurance industry. We also have those coming from the hospitality and restaurant businesses, and they do believe that there are a lack of CPD trainings which tackles the peculiarities of these industries. In the area of information technology knowledge, the results of the quantitative findings show that CPD engagement also does not have a significant impact on the perceived effectiveness of CPD in enhancing information technology knowledge. Many of the participants argued that because of the format of CPD programs is usually designed to be a seminar, there are not much focus on this specific area. They even claimed that even though there are topics related to information technology, it is just basic or purely theoretical. Participants, however, have the perception that IT is a critical part of the profession, and the CPD seminars should address the lack of IT knowledge among CPAs. And given this general view, CPAs resort to self-learning of IT skills. So many of them claim that they usually get their knowledge on IT, like for example, advanced Excel skills, the use of macros, the use of different accounting softwares and tools, either through the internet or while on the job. For the impact of CPD on accounting knowledge, there is no doubt that CPAs clearly see the influence of CPD seminars in enhancing accounting knowledge, because the bulk of CPD seminars, according to the participants, is about accounting standards, taxation, and preparation of financial statements. Some participants, however, mentioned that CPD should also cater to their specific needs in terms of its direct impact to their actual functions. But still, on a grander scale, CPAs believe that CPD sufficiently caters to the enhancement of the accounting knowledge, as it provides CPAs an avenue to refresh their knowledge on the accounting standards and taxation laws, and it also helps them to stay up to date with the ever-changing accounting rules and practices. For interpersonal skills, the results of the quantitative analysis showed that CPD significantly impacts the effectiveness of CPD in enhancing interpersonal skills. So in terms of formal learning of interpersonal skills, the participants claim that CPD seminars do not explicitly discuss this particular skill. However, even though this skill is not being directly targeted in many CPT seminars, in terms of content, some training activities implicitly enhances these skills. For instance, one participant shared that CPD courses give an avenue to meet other professionals, and it gives a platform to build stronger network of professionals. Similar with interpersonal skills, communication is perceived to be of equal importance, but it is not explicitly taught in CPD seminars. Most CPAs perceive communication skills as being practiced already in their daily jobs, but they do believe that better communication skills are achieved through constant practice and effort. And again, similar with interpersonal skills, CPD seminars do provide us an avenue to practice our communication skills. So the integration of the quantitative and qualitative data and analysis have resulted in an expansion of understanding, thus making the conclusions to be drawn not just from the statistical significance and insignificance of CPD, but also from other qualitative aspects brought about by the study. The results of this study revealed that the CPD seminars helped in enhancing certain areas of competence. Specifically, most CPD seminars are viewed by majority of accountants as effective in enhancing technical accounting knowledge and skills. But despite this positive result, the participants of this study raised that CPD could still be improved by allowing accounting standards to be discussed within a context of a specific industry and work function. Because as adult learners, we better appreciate learning opportunities where they can clearly see its direct effect on their actual work. Although implicitly, CPD seminars have been effective in enhancing interpersonal and communication skills. According to the participants, there are very few seminars which specifically cater to these areas. However, attending CPD seminars could already serve as a training ground for accountants to practice these skills. And this is consistent with the skill acquisition theory, which emphasizes the role of practice for an individual to acquire skill and to be eventually an expert in relation to these skills. On the other hand, the CPD seminars are perceived as not effective in catering to the profession's need for enhanced competence in organizational and business concepts, as well as on information technology. And this is because they believe CPD seminars have been too focused on accounting-related topics that it fails to include other necessary non-accounting knowledge that will enable a more holistic learning experience. And with the expanded knowledge that has been brought about by our qualitative analysis, we're able to form a framework in relation to continuing professional development seminars, and it has two parts. So the upper portion of the framework provides the factors influencing the effectiveness of CPD seminars, and the bottom part talks about the contribution of CPD on professional competence. So for the factors influencing the effectiveness of CPD seminars, the results of the study showed that accountants see the value of CPD seminars based on its content, the mode of delivery, and the implicit and explicit cost of complying with the CPD unit requirement. And in terms of content, it's important that we provide comprehensive content, which includes topics which are relevant to industry or functions, real-life applications and best practices, updates on changes in standards and rules, and updates on the changes in the business and economic environment. And as to the mode of delivery, it is important that we increase attendee engagement and participation. And we also must apply a level of self-directedness, which will only be possible once we apply a programmatic approach to CPD. And that means accountants can clearly distinguish or choose topics that are applicable for their current job level, to their current service line, or to the specific industry that they're currently in. And lastly, it's important that we minimize the explicit and implicit cost of complying with the CPD unit requirement, like lowering the cost of CPD programs and having flexible schedules. As to the impact of CPD on competence, of course, having the three factors above considered, CPD will be more effective in enhancing our business and organizational knowledge, specifically our enhanced understanding of economic, accounting, and broad business financial risks and circumstances relevant to an industry and economic sector. For information technology knowledge, stronger understanding of concepts, controls, adaptation, implementation, and use of IT. For accounting knowledge, refreshed and updated knowledge on relevant accounting standards, tax rulings, and laws. For interpersonal skills, improved ability to work cooperatively with others and deal with co-workers, clients, customers, regulators, stakeholders, and the public. And for communication skills, improved ability to communicate verbally or in writing, and ability to ask clear, concise, relevant questions. For the recommendations, for the certified public accountants, we recommend accountants to increase the number of CPD activities undertaken every year in order for them to be more exposed with programs and seminars offered by various CPD providers. In addition, the accountants should also seek for other professional development programs aside from the usual CPD seminars, like enrolling in postgraduate studies, undertaking additional professional certifications, and attending other industry-related conferences. Specifically for the members of the commerce and industry sector, they should explore other providers of industry-specific skills and knowledge, as accountants belonging to this sector are expected to be abreast with the nature of the business and industry their employers, or companies are in. And because of that, they should also take advantage of the internal resources of their company, like from operations or IT, because these key individuals and resources could give them trainings that are tailored fit to their specific professional development needs. Having an active involvement with different types of CPD activities can help accountants discover the type of learning activities that effectively matches their learning styles. Moreover, it also allows them to gain more experience and basis in assessing the current state of CPD in their profession, and so that they can raise valuable inputs and suggestions to the professional body in terms of any possible and necessary improvements to the CPD implementation. For the professional board and regulator, they can use the findings of this study to better understand the accountant's perception towards CPD. As such, we recommend the board to encourage accredited CPD providers to widen course offerings that would cater to the business and industry-specific needs of accountants. In order to ensure that CPD seminars cater to both technical and non-technical aspects of the profession, the PR-BOA and the CPD Council could implement a minimum number of hours on every 4-hour or 8-hour seminar designated for Competence Area B, Professional Skills, and Competence Area C, Professional Values, Ethics, and Attitudes. Moreover, having a simplified and easy process for the accreditation of other self-directed CPD activities would greatly encourage CPAs to explore other learning opportunities outside the realm of the formal CPD seminar. The future of the CPD provision needs to be less supply-led and more demand-driven. As such, the board and the CPD Council may conduct regular surveys that will capture the specific topics that accountants need for their future CPD seminars. We also recommend that further studies be done on the use of non-traditional delivery methods for CPD. Particularly, the board and the CPD Council could look into incorporating more output-based CPD, which could include implementing process improvement projects within the workplace, creating technical documents, manuals, and the likes, because these types of output-based CPD provide a tangible exemplification of accountants' competence. For the members of the academy and future researchers, they could also look into other methods of assessing the impact of CPD on competence, as the current study have utilized the competency areas provided in the core competency framework for entry to the Philippine accountancy profession. We also recommend employing other mixed method research designs, specifically the sequential exploratory design, as it could provide a more comprehensive analysis of CPD and its impact on accountants. So that ends my presentation. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you very much, Ms. Roxani Calixto, for your presentation on continuing professional development. To provide us now some key points identified in the paper, let us welcome our reactor, Ms. Maria Rosel S. Gomez, Risk Assurance Partner, PricewaterhouseCoopers, Philippines.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon to all our participants. So for this afternoon, I am tasked to give comments on the research paper just presented earlier. So specifically, the research paper is about the effectiveness of CPD on the enhancement of CPA's competencies. So a convergent parallel mixed method study. So I hope everyone can see me, and of course my audio is clear.
Yes, Ms. Rosel, loud and clear.
Okay, all right. So first of all, I'd like to thank our research presenter. Actually, I am very interested on this topic. Well, this is the very reason why I picked this particular research paper, because obviously it's very relevant to me as well as a practitioner, as a professional. So again, thank you, Roxani of De La Salle University, and I'd like to congratulate you as well for putting together this paper. So as I mentioned earlier, the study, I find the study very relevant, not only to me as a practitioner, but also to all the professions, and very timely as well. So given that we are all still dealing with the impact of the pandemic, but if everyone would remember, even pre-COVID, this topic is already something that has been creating big noise in the profession, right? So as we are all continuously serving or delivering on our roles to our respective organization or institutions. So there was a time I remember that when the PRC, of course, have increased the requirement in terms of the CPD units from 60 to 120, so it created a huge noise. But then again, highlighting that this paper, again, focuses on the effectiveness of the CPD. It's another aspect to talk about the reduction or the adjustment on the CPD units to be complied with, but it's also a totally different thing to talk about the effectiveness of all the CPDs. So now focusing on the paper, I find it very comprehensive actually. So whether or not we are agreeing to the conclusions, later on we'll talk more about that. So let me start off with the focus area. So the effectiveness of the CPD seminars in enhancing the competencies of CPAs, and then whether its level of effectiveness really varies per sector of the accounting practice. So earlier, Roxani mentioned that as a professional, and based on her personal experience, there are certain aspects of the CPD, how it is being run and how it really creates impact or creates value to her, is something that is worth looking at. So in her paper, so I've noted that she has used the qualitative and quantitative method for this. So particularly focusing on the operational framework. So covering the 5 core competency framework. So she has also outlined it earlier. So the organizational business knowledge, the IT, the accounting, the interpersonal skills, as well as communication. The paper is actually quite lengthy, but and it's not something that I would normally read through on a day-to-day basis, right? But then I was very much caught into it. I read it not because just of this of my role as a reactor, but essentially because it's very on point. It's very detailed. It provides clarity in terms of the problem statement. So what it aims to achieve or to accomplish. So it appeared to me actually, and again, congratulations to you, Roxani, because when I was reading through it, it appeared to me that you have the reader in mind as you were putting together your research paper. So there were enough or sufficient information there that drives clarity on the subject matter. So also you have presented the pros and cons coming from the result of the survey, which is more on the qualitative side. But what I actually comment here and would like to highlight is that you didn't stop from there. I've seen some of the researches that are just limited on the surveys. But what you did there is you further explored on doing a data-driven analysis. So using your calculation to further interpret the responses. And also the beauty of what you have done is that you have mapped it on a per competency basis. So easily, I was able to relate to it as I was going through your paper. And also, I'd like to highlight what you said earlier, that it is also important as for the CPD providers to really understand what really matters to the CPA professional in terms of their CPD. So it has to be responsive to the needs in order to add value to the profession. So essentially, I could say that the bulk of the work, it's not an overnight thing, as similar to what all other researches that have been done. But I could say that it's well controlled, provides clarity, very concise as well. And in terms of your conclusion, so while you have put in there, of course, your all the references, the literatures, the conclusions are very much on point, putting together the summary into 3 areas. So you have highlighted there your key points coming from your study. And again, you are able to continuously bring it back to your focus area in terms of core competencies. And also, from your conclusions, you have highlighted here, engaging engaging in CPD seminars are not perceived as effective in enhancing organizational and business knowledge and IT knowledge. So with that conclusion, so in coming from your study, it is actually a very good opportunity to bring this agenda on the table. So more particularly on enhancing those 3 areas that you have cited. Okay. Moving on the recommendation side, so actually one of the main strengths of your paper that I've seen is your ability to put forward the recommendations to specific and relevant stakeholders. Okay, so you have factored in, of course, the professional himself or herself, and the regulator who's driving the requirement for everyone to comply with the CPD units, and more importantly as well, your recommendation for your fellow researchers, so the future researchers. I from how I see it, it's more of really a call to action. So for all the three stakeholders that you have identified, so because well, for one, as professionals, it is also your personal responsibility to really advance your knowledge, your learning, and your skills, right? So as they said as well, right? So we are all in the digital age, so everything is moving fast, and we have to really upskill ourselves. So new world, new skills. So that's what being said. And also another point that I'd like to pick from your research is that, and also from your presentation, is that when you directed your reader, particularly for the stakeholders and your fellow researchers, you also encourage them to further explore this topic. So it's not something that you feel that whatever you did is already enough. Still, you have opened it. You've basically opened the floor for other fellow researchers to continue building on what you have done, and explore other methods on how to assess the effectiveness of the CPD. Okay, so those are actually the very things that really strike me from your presentation and from your research. And I again, congratulations. I know that everyone here, the participants and all of course, the CPAs out there can very much relate to this topic. So for myself as a practitioner, and I heard you earlier mentioned that you also would like to volunteer and be part in the conversation, okay, to further advance the agenda that you have put in here, assessing the effectiveness of the CPD. So similar to that direction, I myself, I also look forward to seeing these discussions happening and how we can leverage on your research paper and expand it if needed, of course, to effect the change and also achieve the intended benefit from adapting, or if we should we say complying with this continuing professional development requirement. So again, with that sets of comments, so again, congratulations and thank you, Roxani, for putting together this very important topic for us.
Thank you.
Over to you, Sir Mark.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Rosel, for your response and your reaction. At this point, we will virtually award the certificate of presentation to our second presenter. May we once again call on Mr. Alan Frank B. Silva, PICPA Sectoral Director for Education, to represent PICPA. Madam Evelyn Corpus, Chairman of PICPA Foundation Incorporated, and Dr. Florence Tugas, as we award our certificate of presentation. The certificate reads, Philippine Institute of Certified Public Accountants, PICPA Foundation Incorporated, and National Association of Certified Public Accountants in Education present this certificate of presentation to Ms. Roxani C. Calixto, De La Salle University, for presenting a research paper titled The Effectiveness of Continuing Professional Development on the Enhancement of CPA Competencies, a convergent parallel mixed method study during the second joint National Accountancy Research Summit and Conference on October 19 to 20, 2020. Given this 20th day of October 2020, signed Mr. Lope Bate Jr., President of PICPA, Chairman Evelyn Corpus of PICPA Foundation Incorporated, and Dr. Florence C. Tugas, President of NACPAE. Let's give her a round of applause. Congratulations once again, Ms. Roxani. Let us now award our certificate of appreciation to Ms. Maria Rosel S. Gomez of PricewaterhouseCoopers, Isalipana and Company, for her invaluable contribution as reactor during the second Joint National Accountancy Research Summit and Conference on October 19, 2020, given this 20th day of October 2020. Thank you, Ms. Rosel. Let's give her a round of applause.
Always my pleasure, Sir Mark.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Ms. Rosel, and thank you, Ms. Roxani.
Thank you.
Right, so moving forward, let's go to our third presenter for this afternoon. Our next presenter is an experienced certified public accountant and a certified risk analyst with a demonstrated history of working in public practice, internal auditing of a bank, general accounting of advertising and events marketing companies, and controllership and consultancy of business conglomerates. He completed his Bachelor of Science in Accountancy degree from Polytechnic University of the Philippines. He earned his Master of Science focused on accounting, management, business, teaching, and research at St. Scholastica College, Manila, to present his paper titled The Relationship Between Sustainability Reporting and Financial Performance of Selected Universal and Commercial Banks in the Philippines. Let us all welcome Mr. Brian Ken Virarang from PTFC Redevelopment Corporation. Let's all give him a round of applause.
Hello everyone, I'm Brian Kenrarang and I'm presenting to you my research on the relationship between sustainability reporting and financial performance of selected universal and commercial banks in the Philippines. So what's interesting in sustainability reporting is that it is very timely and relevant topic in the corporate world. Before, everything revolved with corporate social responsibility, which tackles the company's initiative to give back to the society. In sustainability reporting, CSR is still part of the picture, but it is now integrated along with the corporate ethics, good governance, economic performance, and environmental initiatives. Sustainability includes clearer focus on green financing, environmental protection, biodiversity conservation, employee rights, promotion of economic stability or sustainability, water efficiency management, and corporate and ethical governance. Sustainability reporting promotes high-quality brand reputation and operational longevity. It helps demonstrate active participation in support of programs linked to social change, economic growth, ethical and good governance, and environmental preservation and protection. It is also a vital component in making purposive decisions and implementing corporate policies. It integrates commercial strategies and considered as best practice, leading to better economic outcomes. Sustainability reporting or sustainability report consolidated non-financial information of businesses, their views, and efforts to promote awareness on economic, environmental, and social issues. The benefits of sustainability reporting include better connection with the stakeholders, company visibility, brand awareness, and reputational advantage. So, though SEC issued memorandum to publish sustainability report, there is no standardized frameworks was required in preparing the reports, meaning different companies may use or may pattern their sustainability reports using different frameworks. So the absence of this standard guidance may lead to selective disclosure in which merely good news will be disclosed and negative issues will be concealed. The uniformity and comparability of sustainability reporting across the industry will not be achieved. Despite the fact that there is still no common framework in preparing sustainability reports, GRI sustainability reporting guidelines are considered as a universally applicable framework. Under GRI sustainability reporting, we have the general standard disclosure, which is the governance, and specific standards such as economic, environmental, and social aspects. So here are the information under the GRI guidelines in general standard disclosure and economic aspect. And here are the information for the environmental aspect and social aspect. In the Philippines, the Securities and Exchange Commission, in its intention to strive for a sustainable economy, has encouraged the reporting of non-financial information and sustainable issues by companies and financial institutions. The Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas, although unable to implement policies, is strengthening the sustainability reporting across the industry, has encouraged banks to initiate sustainable and green financing as a regulatory body monitoring the Philippine banking system. So, going to the financial performance is used as a general measure of banks' overall financial health over a given period, and it is helpful in analyzing similar banks across the industry. Financial performance is measured according to the required basic quantitative indicators of the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas, which are return on equity, return on asset, and net interest margin. At the end of the year 2017, which is the subject of this research, the Philippine banking system's stabilized ROE at around 10%, ROA at above 1%, and net interest margin at about 3%. So banks are motivated to sustainability reporting because, first, it serves as an effective form of communication with the stakeholders. It promotes accountability and transparency. It improves public perception and brand image, and there are pressures from different stakeholders. Some researchers pointed out positive relationship between corporate sustainability and financial performance, and these are driven by several factors such as the size of the firms, the banking policy, moderation of sustainability performance, and economic growth. Some researchers argued that corporate sustainability and CSR cannot influence corporate financial performance and the corporate values, and these relationships are insignificant and inconclusive because there is a subjective nature of the measurement of sustainability, inconsistent reporting of companies, and incomplete disclosure of actual sustainable practices. So this study is anchored by stakeholders theory, which pioneered by author Edward Freeman. According to Freeman, stakeholder theory points out of two essential things. First, a clear definition of what is the organization's main purpose, and second, putting emphasis on the responsibilities of the management to its stakeholders. Sustainability is a corporate responsibility oriented towards all stakeholders, and companies need to create value for customers, suppliers, employees, investors, owners, creditors, society, and government. Financial performance is measured in this study through financial statement analysis, which explain return on equity as a measures profit as a percentage of equity capital of banks, return assets, which indicates the measure as a percentage of total assets, net interest margins, which refers to the ratio of annualized net interest income to average earning assets. So statement of the problem. The purpose of the study was to address the following research question. First, what are the extents of disclosure of overall sustainability reporting, general governance aspect, economic aspect, environmental aspect, and social aspect of the universal and commercial banks in the Philippines based on the GRI guidelines? What are the return on equity, return on assets, and net interest margin of universal and commercial banks in the Philippines? Is there a relationship between the extent of disclosure of overall sustainability reporting and return on equity, return on asset, and net interest margin of the universal and commercial banks in the Philippines? Lastly, is there a relationship between the extent of disclosure of general governance aspect, economic aspect, environmental aspect, and social aspect, and return on equity, return on assets, and net interest margin of universal and commercial banks in the Philippines? Hypothesis. The following hypotheses are developed for the correlation study and multiple regression model. Hypothesis 1 or H1, there is a positive relationship between the extent of disclosure of overall sustainability reporting and return on equity of universal and commercial banks in the Philippines. H2, positive relationship between governance aspect and return on equity. H3, positive relationship between economic aspect and return on equity. H4, positive relationship between environmental aspect and return on equity. H5, positive relationship between social aspect and return on equity. H6, positive relationship between overall sustainability reporting and return on assets. H7, positive relationship between general governance and return on assets. H8, positive relationship between the extent of disclosure of economic aspect and return on assets. H9, positive relationship between environmental aspect and return on asset. H10, positive relationship between social aspect and return on assets. H11, positive relationship between overall sustainability reporting and net interest margin. H12, positive relationship between general governance aspect and net interest margin. H13, positive relationship between economic aspect and net interest margin. H14, positive relationship between the extent of disclosure of the environmental aspect and net interest margin. H15, there is a positive relationship between the extent of disclosure of the social aspect and net interest margin of universal and commercial banks in the Philippines. H16, there is a relationship between the extent of disclosure of general governance aspect, economic aspect, environmental aspect, and social aspect and return on equity. H17 for the return on assets, H18 for the net interest margin. Method. The research design combined both qualitative and quantitative methods, which are content analysis and correlational research analysis. A descriptive analysis was also used to summarize the data collected. In testing the hypothesis relationship between sustainability reporting and the financial performance, correlational analysis through Spearman's rank order correlation was conducted to test H1 to H15 and multiple regression analysis for H16 to H18. The study considered universal and commercial banks in the Philippines. Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas listed 46 banks, and out of these, 30 banks had made their 2017 annual reports, sustainability reports, audit financial statement, and corporate social responsibility reports published in their websites and available to the public. The selection of sample is based on the availability of secondary source literature. A two-part scoring sheet was developed. Part 1 lists the disclosure in the HRI Guidelines Content Index representing the independent variable. Part 2 record the values of basic quantitative indicators of financial performance, which is ROE, ROA, and NIM. Ethical consideration. Using the secondary data eliminates ethical issues regarding data collection as the information comes from published annual report, sustainability reports, audited financial statement, and bank's website are all available to all users. Results and discussion. Or statement of the problem number 1. The extent disclosure of sustainability reporting of the universal and commercial banks in the Philippines based on the GRI guidance. So here is the result. The extent of level of disclosure of the overall sustainability reporting of universal and commercial banks reported during 2017 are lower priority to environmental and social aspect and outstanding effort for good governance and economic. When it comes to mean or average reporting, the ranking is lead by the governance aspect with 90.95, followed by 81.67 of economic aspect, social aspect with 50.11%, and lowest is environmental with 33.61. So the descriptive analysis showed that among the aspects of sustainability reporting, universal and commercial banks in the Philippines give lower priority when reporting of environmental and social aspects of sustainability. However, banks exerted an outstanding effort when it comes to reporting good governance and economical information in their sustainability reports. So we may say that there is a voluntary nature of sustainability reporting because the policies implemented by the SEC mandate the publication of sustainability reports of only the publicly listed banks and not the entire banking system. Philippine banks, through BSP, are encouraged to engage in sustainable practices but are not mandated to publish sustainability reports. For the statement of the problem number 2, the financial performance of universal and commercial banks in the Philippines are all within the 2017 performance of the Philippine banking system. So ROE at around 10% and ROA at above 1% and NIM at about 3%. Statement of the problem number 3. The result indicated that there is no positive or significant relationship between the extent of disclosure of sustainability reporting and ROE. Therefore, reject hypothesis 1 to hypothesis 5. There is also no positive or significant relationship between the extent of disclosure of sustainability reporting and ROA. Therefore, reject hypothesis 6 to hypothesis 10. There is also no significant or positive relationship between the extent of disclosure of sustainability reporting and net interest margin. Therefore, reject hypothesis 11 and hypothesis 15. Statement of the problem number 4. The multiple regression models was unable to significantly predict financial performance as measured by return on equity. Same with the return in assets and net interest margin. Therefore, there is no relationship between the results of the study similar to previous studies due to the voluntary nature and lack of a standard framework and the dissimilarities of objectives of SEC and BSP. In view of the absence of positive and significant relationship between the extent of disclosure of sustainability reporting and financial performance, the results do not imply that universal and commercial banks should not continue their sustainable practices and reporting to promote sustainable initiatives. Since the mandatory publication of sustainability reports in the Philippines is in the early stage of implementation, the results are purely indicative that majority of the universal and commercial banks are still in the process of adopting comprehensive and applicable sustainability reporting frameworks such as GRI guidelines. Conclusion and recommendation. Conclusion number 1. The Philippine banks have not fully implemented a comprehensive reporting on sustainability, such as the GRI guidelines. The voluntary nature of sustainability reporting resulted in a low number of universal and commercial banks engaged in sustainability reporting and merely a few that are actively involved in the environmental and social awareness activities. The financial performance of the selected universal and commercial banks in terms of return on assets, return on equity, and net interest margin is within the level of the overall performance of the Philippine banking system. The results of the study revealed that sustainability reporting based on the GRI guideline do not have significant positive relationship to the financial performance of universal and commercial banks in the Philippines. Therefore, the absence of standard sustainability reporting framework in the marketplace contributed a lot. So the results of this study do not imply that the banking sector should not continue their sustainable practices and reporting to promote sustainable initiatives. Banks are still creating values through sustainability by improving return on capital by introducing better technological innovation in the banking activities. Sustainability and transparency can help banks to build and maintain consumer trust, just like ethical financial reporting does. Recommendations. Make sustainability reporting a mandatory practice in banking industry through Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas. Issue a standardized framework prescribing the contents of a comprehensive sustainability report and with a reduced requirements to mitigate the cost burden. Motivate banks to adequate disclosure of sustainability by holding a corporate sustainability reporting award. Sustainability report like financial statement could undergo external attestation and graded as to the completeness, relevance, and based on the adopted sustainability reporting framework. This research suggests examining the same relationship over the next period upon implementation of legislation about mandatory sustainability reporting. Further research may also obtain data across multiple years to evaluate the long-term effect of sustainability reporting on the firm's financial performance and not just a short-term assessment. And that is the end of this report. Thank you. I'm Brian Kenrara.
Right, so thank you very much for that presentation. May we request, I think Mr. Brian is here. When Sir Ryan would act as reactor, may we request Sir Brian Rara to open his video and microphone. Sir Brian. Right, so at this point, may we call on Mr. Ryan Roque to give us some key points identified in this paper. So let's call on Mr. Ryan C. Roque from the Polytechnic University of the Philippines. Sir Ryan.
Thank you very much, Professor Mark Bendo. Can you hear and see me? Hi, Sir Mark, can you see me? Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We can see and hear you, sir.
Thank you very much. So good afternoon, everyone. First of all, I'd like to congratulate Mr. Brian Ken V. Rarang for your paper entitled The Relationship Between the Sustainability Reporting and Financial Performance of Selected Universal and Commercial Banks in the Philippines. So I really think that this study is very interesting, especially that Sustainability reports are really the best platforms for organizations to connect with their stakeholders and to disclose their economic, environmental, and social targets and performance. And according also to SEC Memorandum Number 4, some benefits of sustainability reporting include the effective management of the sustainability risks and opportunities, as well as improve company reputation and brand value, and of course, investor attractiveness. So, but please allow me to comment a bit on the title. This is just a very minor issue because based on the lecture of Dr. Fed this morning, I think the title would still be good, even if we remove the words the relationship between. Because using the title, Sustainability Reporting and Financial Performance of Selected Universal and Commercial Banks in the Philippines already suggests that we would like to study the relationship between these two variables, the sustainability reporting and financial performance. But I agree with Mr. Rarang that sustainability has really become the focus of global attention nowadays. And Mr. Rarang was able to review sufficient literature and studies. He was able to show us that there are existing research studies in the Philippines that examine the sustainability reporting and practices of publicly listed companies. However, none is concentrating in the financial sector. So that is why, to fill the research gap, he focused on the sustainability reporting of the banking industry in the Philippines and trying to investigate the relationship with the financial performance. Mr. Rarang, in your methods of research, you mentioned that this is a combination of quantitative and qualitative research. But I really think that this is really a qualitative study because your paper made use of the researcher as a primary instrument, the semi-directive na mga interviews, observations, and documents, instead of using yung mga statistical data, survey, and questionnaires. I really think that this one is a qualitative study. But the good thing about the qualitative study is that according to Dr. Fed this morning, the ethical issues regarding the data collection are eliminated. So this study actually, the data and the basis for testing relied on the secondary data, which are available in the public domain. So this data came from the published na mga 2017 annual reports, the sustainability reports, yung audited FS ng mga banks, and Mr. Rarang looked at the bank's websites, and these are all available to all users. Yeah, and I also agree with the aspects that he chose when he tried to evaluate how extensive the sustainability information reported. So the researcher made use of the GRI, or the Global Reporting Initiative Sustainability Reporting Guidelines. So in terms of yung lima, yung overall sustainability reporting, the good governance aspect, the economic aspect, the environmental aspect, and the social aspect. And based on the results of his study, unfortunately, the commercial banks in the Philippines gave lower priority to reporting the environmental and social aspects. And I think that has something to do with the voluntary nature of sustainability reporting in the banking system of the Philippines. That's why it resulted to a low number of universal and commercial banks that are engaged in sustainability reporting. And I think only the publicly listed universal and commercial banks are required to produce sustainability reports. And while those who, that are privately held, they may just voluntarily disclose sustainability or not to publish at all. And the researcher also recognized the limitation that the findings that he got may not precisely depict the sample of the universal and commercial banks. It's good that he mentioned that, and that would be that would give or provide strong incentives for future researchers who can expand the study. But in terms of financial performance, I must say that Mr. Rarang was able to choose the three among the important parameters for measuring the profitability of the banks. So these are the return on equity, or ROE, the return on assets, or ROA, and the net interest margin, or NIM. And all these parameters, based on Mr. Rarang Mr. Arang's findings, these are all within the range of the 2017 overall performance of the Philippine banking system. And I think the conclusions were on point, and these are aligned to all the statement of the problems. And recommendations were really based on the results of the study. However, since all his hypotheses were rejected, the results cannot really be used to mandate. He recommended to mandate the sustainability reporting. However, based on your results, I think we can really use this to mandate the universal and commercial banks in the Philippines to engage in sustainability reporting, because there is neither positive nor significant relationship between the extent of disclosures of sustainability reporting and the financial performance, meaning sustainability reporting does not have an impact to the financial performance of the universal and commercial banks in the Philippines as of 2017, or during the time that you conducted your study. But however, even if sustainability reporting may not be recommended to be mandated because of the results in your study, I agree with Mr. Rarang that BSP and any non-governmental banking organizations and associations may have the initiative to give corporate sustainability reporting award, the corporate sustainability reporting award, because in that way, the banks could be motivated to do adequate disclosure. And after some years, maybe another study can be conducted to reassess the relationship between the extent of disclosures of sustainability reporting and the financial performance. So once again, I would like to thank and congratulate as well Mr. Brian Ken Rarang for sharing with us this good study, which is really of great impact and significance, especially to banking industry. And to all the participants of this research summit, good day, stay safe, and may God bless us all. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sir Ryan Roque. At this point, we will virtually award the certificate of presentation to our third presenter. May we request Mr. Alan Frank B. Silva, the PICPA Sectoral Director for Education, Madam Evelyn Corpus from PICPA Foundation, and Dr. Florence Tugas to join us in this awarding. The certificate reads, Philippine Institute of Certified Public Accountants, PICPA Foundation Incorporated, National Association of CPAs in Education, present this certificate of presentation to Mr. Brian Ken B. Rarang, PTF Redevelopment Corporation, for presenting a research paper titled The Relationship Between Sustainability Reporting and Financial Performance of Selected Universal and Commercial Banks in the Philippines during the second Joint National Accountancy Research Summit and Conference on October 19 to 20, 2020. Given this 20th day of October 2020, signed President Lope Bato Jr., PICPA, Chairman Evelyn Corpus of PICPA Foundation Incorporated, and President Dr. Florence Tugas of NACPAI. We'd also like to present our certificate of appreciation to our reactor for this for the third paper. So the certificate reads, the certificate of appreciation is presented to Mr. Ryan C. Roque, Polytechnic University of the Philippines, for his invaluable contribution as reactor during the second Joint National Accountancy Research Summit and Conference on October 9 to 20, 2020. Given this 20th day of October 2020, signed President Bato, Chairman Corpus, and President Florence Tugas. So thank you po, Sir Ryan Roque. Before we proceed to the next part of our program, we would like to acknowledge the presence and support of Madam Maria Asuncion M. Goles, past PICPA National President and PICPA Foundation Chairman. Thank you po for joining us, Madam Goles. Good afternoon po. We'd also like to acknowledge the presence and support of Mr. Maria Teodoro Josephat C. Martinez Jr., who is serving as the Assistant Secretary of the PICPA Foundation Incorporated. Sir Afat, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. Moving forward to our next presenter, our fourth presenter. So this young professional is a student leader at heart. He graduated Bachelor of Science in Accountancy at St. Louis College, San Fernando, La Union on April 2015 with various awards and passed the CPA board exam during the same year. With vibrance and enthusiasm, he engaged himself to diverse accounting tasks to different institutions at the same time. He served as a business consultant of a US-aided project of the Department of Agriculture, Regional Field Office 1, and pursues his teaching career in the evening at St. Louis College. He also served as an internal auditor of St. Louis Credit and Consumers Cooperative. Currently, he is serving as in the public as agency chief accountant at the Commission on Higher Education. With us this afternoon to present his paper titled Implementation of Outcomes-Based Education for Accountancy Program, let us all welcome Mr. Emmanuel M. Munar.
Good afternoon po. Am I loud and clear po?
Yes, Mr. Munar, we can see and hear you. You may start chanting.
Okay po, sir. So to all our PICPA officers, fellow researchers, to my fellow accountants, to our viewers and listeners all over the archipelago, good afternoon. Without any much further ado and considering the limited time allotment for this presentation, I would like to present my study entitled Implementation of Outcomes-Based Education for Accountancy Program. So the flow of the presentation we would be starting with the introduction, a short background of the study, the presentation of the methods, the meat of the study, which is the findings, as we get to end with the recommendations. So let's get started with the introduction. So for the introduction, it cannot be denied that education sector, being part of the services sector, cannot escape the pressures of globalization. In fact, in the GDP growth in the global arena, knowledge services account significant portion of the GDP. In the Philippines, 60% of our GDP is accounted for the knowledge services. Hence, the crucial role of education in the development of this knowledge. In the Global Competitiveness Report of the World Economic Forum, last 2018 to 2019, the Philippine higher education system ranked 87, which has worsened of our rank of that compared with 2015 64th rank. And on the World University rankings, only 4 of our 1,900 higher education institutions made it to the top 800 universities worldwide. Thus, it is believed that through the implementation of OBE, these pressures of globalization in the academic sector are addressed. And OBE is a paradigm shift to teacher-centered to student-centered instruction. Principles of OBE the study included the philosophy of education, since education is implied in OBE, and that includes progressivism, humanism, and constructivism. Also, OBE model by Speedy was also included in the study, and this includes the principles of clarity of focus, designing down high expectations, and expanded opportunities. For the legal basis of OBE, it started with the issuance of Executive Order Number 83, Series of 2012, which sought to enhance the Philippine qualifications to align with the international standards, followed by CMO 26, CMO 46, Series of 2012, and the issuance of revised policy standards and guidelines for Bachelor of Science in Accountancy. For the research paradigm, the study included higher education institutions offering BS Accountancy program. The extent of implementation of outcome-based education and accountancy program are being assessed in terms of OB policy or manual, the OB trained faculty and administrators, and the OB teaching tools and facilities, using a researcher-made questionnaire. The problems encountered in the implementation of OB, as well as the success stories, are likewise assessed using a semi-structured interview. And the results from this are being taken for the formulation of recommendations. Statement of the problem: this study evaluated the implementation of OB for accountancy program in Region 1. Specifically, it sought to answer the following questions. What is the extent of OB implementation on the 3 areas? Secondly, what are the problems encountered in the implementation of OB for accountancy program? And the last problem that has to be addressed is what are the success stories in the implementation of OB for accountancy program? Moving forward is the methodology or the methods used. The research of design of the study used mixed methods of quantitative plus qualitative method. Quantitative method seeks to satisfy the problem number one, that is the assessment of the extent of OB implementation. Meanwhile, quantitative method through thematic analysis was used to satisfy problems 2 and 3, and that is the identification of problems encountered and success stories during OB implementation. As to the population and locale of the study, the researcher identified selection criteria in identifying HEI, likewise in identifying the respondents from the identified HEIs. For the HEI, it must be located in Region 1, of course. Secondly, must be offering BSN accountancy program, must be considered at least good performing on the majority of the past 5 board exams. That's October 2017 board exam to October 2019 CPA board exam. For the criteria in the selection of respondents from those HEIs, the faculty must be tenured and permanent and must be teaching CPA board subjects, and of course, must have at least 3 years of teaching experience in accountancy board subjects. And using the foregoing criteria, we have identified 5 HEIs would be the partakers of this study, where we will be taking the respondents. We have 1 participants or 6 participants from Ilocos Sur. That's 1 HEI. HEI-B from La Union with 5 respondents. HEI-C from C, D, and E from Pangasinan with a total of 15 respondents. Are you still with me? With a total of 26 respondents.
Yes, sir. We can still hear you, sir.
For the data gathering tools, a questionnaire checklist was used on. This questionnaire is a researcher made that is adapted. And secondly, an interview guide was used for the answering problems 2 and 3. This interview guide is semi-structured, thus future questions may be thrown so that the objectives of this study may be satisfied. The reliability of the instrument was floated or pilot tested to University of Baguio School of Business and Accountancy with a reliability statistics Cronbach's alpha of 0.766, and the consistency is acceptable. Thus, this is good for administration of the questionnaire. After we get the pilot test and ascertain the reliability of the questionnaire, we seek endorsement from the Commission on Higher Education, and to maintain anonymity of the researcher, I just get to distribute the questionnaires to our HEIs, and the HEIs did the distribution or administration of the questionnaires. And then after which we conducted interview so that we could gather relevant data or information for our thematic analysis, which would satisfy problems 2 and 3. So these are the pictures taken during the conduct of interview. I get to interview 2 deans, 2 program heads, and 1 faculty from the 5 HEIs, identified HEIs, thus the diverse source of information. For the treatment of data quantitative method, we use a Likert scale. 4 for if the provisions or conditions of OBE are very much implemented. 3 if it's only much implemented. 2 if there are provisions that still need some considerations, and 1 if it is not implemented at all. For qualitative analysis, to identify, analyze, and report patterns within the data gathered from the interviews, thematic analysis was employed. The information gathered and made concrete through notes and transcripts were analyzed using thesis of Lichman of 2013. This thesis includes coding, categorizing, and concepts. In the coding stage, the notes and transcripts referred to as the raw data were read, studied, and reread, highlighting the significant statements and giving them appropriate codes depending on the needs of the study, and after which the codes based on the statements were categorized, and those with almost the same ideas were lumped into same categories, and finally these categories were grouped into broader concepts or the themes. And on the meat of the studies, of course, the findings, first is problem number one, what is the extent of OB implementation in terms of the following provisions. As to the institutionalization of OB policy or manual, whether it is communicated to the BS accountancy program, the result showed that it is very much implemented. Also, as regards to the implementation of such OB policy or manual in the accountancy program, it is also very much implemented. However, as to the OB core group or team, whether it is established for the accountancy program, is functional, the result showed that it is only much implemented. Meanwhile, for the institutionalization of vision, mission, and goals, whether competencies or where competencies which the BSN accountancy program accountancy graduates need to demonstrate after graduation were revisited, it is very much implemented. For the institutionalization of the outcomes, whether competencies of ideal BS in accountancy graduates that emanate from vision, mission, and goals of the institutions are identified, it is also very much implemented. Same is true with the specific program outcomes, the required minimum set of program outcomes specific for BSN accountancy program, and same is true with the minimum set of learning outcomes for the business and management discipline, whether it is established or not. For the course outcomes, where if it is or if these are formulated for each course or subject, they are also very much implemented. Same is true with the learning outcomes formulated for every lesson in the course or subject, and the formulation of outcomes if it has used the appropriate verbs, active verbs that are measurable and observable. Overall, as to the area of OB policy manual, the result shows an average mean of 3.44, which imply that it is very much implemented, which implies that it is very much implemented. With regard to the area of OB trained faculty and administrators, the result shows that the academic officials of the institution are OB trained on the OBE. It is very much implemented. There is also a very much implementation in terms of the training for dean and program head and on the faculty members of the BSN accountancy program. Overall, the implementation for the area of OB trained faculty and administrators is very much implemented with the average mean of 3.36. For the OB teaching tools and facilities, as regards to the facilities and learning resources to implement OBE, whether they are sufficient and relevant, they are much implemented. For the curriculum, whether it follows the CHED OB framework, for example, the course outcomes are aligned with the programs, and that learning activities and assessment are aligned with the learning outcomes of each subject or course, it is also very much implemented. The outcomes-based syllabus and learning plans are used. It has come to the attention of the researcher that it is also very much implemented. As regards to the OB assessment tools, whether they measure the attainment of desired competencies are provided, it is also very much implemented. Same is true with the classrooms in terms of their provision, whether they are sufficient and utilized. For the physical facilities, they are also provided, sufficient and utilized. As regards to that, it is only much implemented. And for the library resources, it is only much implemented as to the provision and the sufficiency of these resources. Moving forward, for the linkages for academic resources, whether they are provided with sufficiency and proper utilization, it is only much implemented based on the data gathered from the researcher-made questionnaire. And lastly, for the teaching and learning processes, whether it is geared or they are geared towards the attainment of the institutional outcomes, program outcomes, and learning outcomes, it is very much implemented. As to this area of OBE, on the OB teaching tools and facilities, the average mean resulted to 3.27. This implies that it is very much implemented. For us to have a clearer picture of the result of our study, this figure presents the average means of the three areas. For OB policy manual, the average mean is 3.44. For OB trained faculty and administrators, the average mean is 3.36. And lastly, for OB teaching tools and facilities, the average mean is only at 3.27. This made us believe that while there are very much implementation on the three areas, much of the implementation is attributed on the OB policy manual, while a list of the implementation is on OB teaching tools and facilities. So without looking into the qualitative analysis of this study, we could already assert or imply that one of the reasons maybe is the financial requirement in providing these tools and facilities in the implementation of OBE. For the problems encountered in the implementation of OBE, the knowledge of obstacles of an OB system together with its causes are necessary to continuously update the awareness about problems and issues in education and to support the launch of innovative and effective programs or activities that will help them in resolving these problems, paving the way in achieving the quality outcomes. And with that, we have these problems. First is the difficulty in institutionalizing the OB policy or manual. Since quality goals are anchored to the individual HAI's unique vision and mission statements, institutions should craft their own respective policies to properly meet their goals. And in that regard, they encounter difficulty in institutionalizing their OB policy and manual in accordance to their unique vision, mission, and statements. There is also problem in the difficulty. There is also difficulty in the formulation of objectives, since this problem included the difficulty in the choosing appropriate verbs for the outcomes and the alignment of these outcomes with the course. It is also evident that there is a faculty resistance to change. Since OB is an innovation and a new mantra in education, the research found out that there was a resistance on the part of the faculty to adopt the prescribed OB teaching method, since the traditional teaching method has been used by the same for years, and that they have considered the implementation of OBE as abrupt and immediate. This may be the reason why during trainings of faculty and administrators prior to OB implementation, they seem to check out of the learning process because of the lack of interest and appreciation on the subject matter. There were also issues on human resources, since they experience a fast turnover of faculty, which would mean losing competent OB implementers. There were also issues on the faculty development, since the schools were inconsistent, or worse, they have failed to send its faculty to training, seminars, and orientations. It was also noted that some of the faculty still do not possess a master's degree, which is a minimum requirement of teaching in the tertiary level as provided under CMO 27, series of 2017, or the PSG, or Policies, Standards, and Guidelines for BS and Accountancy program. Moving forward, there is also an evident lack of learning resources. These resources encompass electronic books and journals which are accessible in the internet. Since the access in the internet was also limited, the access to electronic resources is also limited. And lastly, there is also there was limited physical facilities. These physical facilities, which deemed to be limited, include classrooms and multimedia facilities. Success stories in the OB implementation. It is important for us also to have knowledge of the successes for us to grow even faster by sustaining these developments. And one of the successes as a result of the thematic analysis include the enhancement of the basic and technical competencies of the students, since through the issuance of the CMO 27 series of 2017, it was mandated that more professional subjects should be integrated or embodied in the curriculum. The knowledge of the students on the accounting profession was enhanced. Apart from the development of their technical competencies, their basic competencies such as creativity, communication skills, among others, have also improved. Moving forward, one of the successes also is the support to faculty development. The school management became more supportive to faculty development, and one of the ways in the development of quality teachers is by sending them to trainings and seminars. To prevent the fast turnover of faculty, opportunities for promotions, scholarships, and other incentives were also or likewise offered by the HEI. There was also an evident manifestation of the application of new teaching strategies or practices. These new strategies include the practice of allowing students to jot down on paper some anonymous responses to an aspect of this class session. With that student feedbacks, improvements in delivering the lesson are improved on the succeeding classes. There is also a constant acquisition of the new set of books. HEIs have enforced effective mechanisms to update their existing books to complement curriculum delivery and to optimize the achievement of the program outcomes in the BS accountancy program. Also, there is also an evident development of research skills for students since the access to internet was developed. More opportunities was given to the students and faculty to access more scholarly information. Also, more research activities were provided to the students. There is also a retooling of the curriculum and syllabus by the implementation of OBE. Likewise, there are institutional measures undertaken by the institution, and one of which is the development of professional learning community. The kind of community occurs when an individual basically engage with colleges or colleagues with the same interest in education. Once teachers develop a culture of collaboration, professional learning community occurs. With the absence of a functional OBE core group or team, the faculty, the dean, and the program head tend to develop a community of professionals so that they could at least at some way solve these deficiencies. There is also a constant monitoring of faculty and graduates. The monitoring and evaluation of the graduate help in continuously improving school policies. It is also equally necessary for every HEI to keep track of their faculty to maintain a pool of competent of OB trained faculty. And also, lastly, one of the institutional measures undertaken is the funding of instructional facilities. To resolve issues on OB teaching tools and facilities, the schools employed effective mechanisms to provide various facilities and infrastructures to cater the needs of the faculty and students, and by requesting from them a listing of such needed facilities. The school also authorized the acquisition of the OB facilities through the initiatives of the faculty and students. So for us to have a better picture of the results from the thematic analysis under the OB policy or manual, we encountered problems on the institutionalization of OB policy or manual, as well as the formulation of clear objectives. This is because of the absence of a functional OB core group or team. And one of the measures undertaken is the development of professional learning community. As to the faculty and administrators, there is a resistance on the part of the faculty to adopt the prescribed OB teaching method. There is also a lack of interest of faculty expressed during trainings. This is because of the faculty attachment to the traditional teaching method. There is also a loss of well-trained OB implementers because of the fast turnover faculty. There's also failure to acquire master's degree by some of the faculty, and lack of training for the new faculty due to budget constraints. And the provision of various trainings for the faculty was used to address these problems. For the teaching tools and facilities, two problems were encountered. One is the insufficient learning and library resources, and secondly, the inadequate physical facilities. These are due to budget constraints, and to address these issues, budget allocation for the acquisition of the needed facilities were provided first by the administration of the institution, and secondly, by the faculty and students' initiatives. For the conclusion, tertiary institutions in Region 1 offering BS in Accountancy program have already highly implemented the provisions and conditions, except for the following provisions. First is the functional OB core group or team, the sufficiency of learning and library resources, the acquisition of physical facilities, as well as the establishment of linkages for academic resources. While there are notable successes from the OB implementation, there were still problems encountered that have to be addressed. Recommendations: in the part of the higher education institutions, it is recommended that they have to strengthen the OB core group or team. The strengthening of OB core group or team is done by establishing criteria in the selection of the members who would compose their respective OB core group or teams. Also, they are recommended to constantly update the OB teaching tools and facilities, since these are constantly monitored by the Commission on Higher Education, and to efficiently implement OBE. And lastly, they are also recommended to widen their academic linkages. It is also important for them to extend or strengthen their partnership with other institutions, and these are made manifest through the presence of memorandum of agreement and benchmark documents. For the Commission on Higher Education, the Commission is recommended to consistently assist HEIs in the course of implementation of OB, of course, and that includes their guidance in the selection of the members of the OB core group or team, and secondly is the constant monitoring and evaluation of the faculty and the HEIs in terms of their program based on accountancy program. And for future researchers, first, they are recommended to strengthen their research methodology. The strengthening of research methodology by using triangulation of data, because in the study, I have only included the perception of the faculty as well as the top level management. But using triangulation of data, the point of view of or the perception of the students are also taken into consideration. Likewise, instead or other than measuring the implementation or level of implementation of OBE, it is also recommended the effectiveness of this implementation should likewise be measured. And lastly, there should also be a comparative analysis of the perceptions, whether there is a significant difference in terms of the perception of the faculty and deans from the public and private HEIs. And lastly, for the future researchers to conduct longitudinal study, because it is expected that conduct of research on a longer period of time. By that time, the researcher conducts a study to assess the OB implementation for accountancy program. It is expected that a richer data will already be available for the first batch of graduates coming from the new curriculum. And I think that ends my presentation. Before I get to close with my presentation, allow me to read the statement of Dr. Roy Killen. It should be clear that OBE is not an event, but a total approach to education. It is not something that has to be fitted into the timetable, but rather a set of ideas that influence the total curriculum. Again, thank you for listening. Good afternoon, and my sincerest apologies for certain technical deficiencies. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Mr. Emmanuel Munar, for your presentation on outcomes-based education. So may we request Mr. Munar to keep his video on as we hear our reactor for this paper. So to provide us some key points identified in the paper, let us now welcome our reactor, Mr. Francisco M. Caliwan Jr. from the University of Santo Tomas.
Hello, good afternoon. Hello,
sir.
Mr. Munar.
Good afternoon, sir.
Are you also teaching? Are you in the academe then? Aside from
right now, sir, I'm already full-time in public service, but before I used to teach in the tertiary level, sir.
Yes, kasi napakaganda ng paper mo. Well,
thank you, sir.
Firstly, I would like to thank you for choosing this topic. May kwento ko lang, no, there was this participant before in a CPD program about OBE that I have attended, and katabi ko siya, and sabi niya, you know what, OBE is very much over-discussed topic. OBE is already a cliche topic, but I do not share the same sentiment. For me, OBE is still a very relevant topic, especially for us sa accounting field. As long as there are still teachers who do not fully appreciate and support OBE, naniniwala pa din sila sa traditional teaching, as long as there are still course descriptions which are not clear as to the outcomes of the course, as long as there are still institutions na walang program, clear program intended learning outcomes, as long as there are still questions in our examinations and even in the CPA board examination na hindi outcomes-based, we need more researches about OBE. And for that, thank you very much for this paper.
Thank you, sir.
First, I would like to commend yung iyong RRL. Your RRL is very rich and strong. I personally believe ito, natutunan ko to kay Dr. Flong in one of his research trainings in UST. Strong RRL is very much important because it is where the statement of the problem emanates. Doon nanggagaling yung research question, yung problem natin. So in your RRL, you make kwento, nag-narrate ka. The roots of OBE can be traced as early as 1950, and then in 1990s, OBE was introduced internationally. There are actually a lot of international organizations and movements that promote OBE. One of the most famous is the Washington Accord, which is luckily Philippines has become a signatory starting 2018, di ba? Imagine late na tayo pumasok sa kwento about OBE. But in fairness to the Philippines, no, our government has initiated ways so that Philippine schools should adopt OBE. You mentioned the legal basis of OBE in Philippines, which is the Executive Order number 83 in 2012, nationalization of PQF, and then institutionalization of PQF, sorry. And then we have CHED Memorandum Order number 46, also in 2012, competency-based standard and OBE system. And finally, our CMO for the BS Accountancy, CMO number 27. So yun nga, you have a very rich RRL. And the number 2 that I would like to comment about your paper is the way you crafted your SOP. No? So, kwinentuhan mo kami sa iyong RRL about OBE, and now after 8 years, here's what you want to discover through your paper. Kumusta yung Pilipinas? How is it in the Philippines? So, if I may share again, yung statement of your problem is the level of implementation based on OBE policy manual, OBE trained faculty, and OBE teaching tools. And then you've also dwell into problems encountered in implementing OBE and success stories of implementing OBE. So although small population lang muna sa ngayon, no? Small population for a start in Region 1, but this is a good start. Maybe sa future researches, talagang buong Pilipinas na yung cover natin. And the number 3 that I would like to comment is about your methods. No? So first, population and local, not just the admin, but also the faculty members. Although you've mentioned in your recommendations yung triangulation of data, it is also good, no, to consider later in the further researches or future researches, the students. And then methods, qualitative and quantitative, mixed method. And isa din sa talagang nagustuhan ko about your paper is the CHED support. No? So my recommendation ng CHED, yung paper mo, na-recommend nila yung data gathering mo. And finally, I would like to dwell on alignment. So natutunan ko din to kay Sir Flong, no? Good research is about satisfaction of basic alignment of the parts of the paper. So tiningnan ko talaga itong maigi. The statement of the problem, is it aligned with your conclusion? And then the significance of the study aligned with your recommendation. Actually, napakadaming pwede pang maging future researches sa mga binanggit mong conclusions and recommendations. Actually, doon sa alignment ng SOP mo and conclusion, first is yung level of implementation. Based on your research, it's high. So talagang andun yung sagot about level, high or low, and then based on your paper, it's high. And then problems encountered and success stories, you've summarized the issues and concerns, and then success stories about implementing OBE. So I would just like to highlight some of the success stories, no, about your paper in implementing OBE. So essentially, ang naging focus ang naging result ng paper is faculty development talaga, yung number 1, which is for me talaga naman. Kasi 'di ba, how can we develop our students if personally we as teachers, we feel that hindi tayo din fully equipped kulang tayo sa training. Kaya nga dapat yung paper mo, naririnig talaga to ng mga school administrators. Kasi yung iba sa atin, hirap magpa-approve ng mga budget when it comes to training, faculty development. And also, dapat marinig to ng CHED yung paper mo and marinig ng other stakeholders, regulatory bodies ng profession natin. Actually, personally, yung ano ko talaga dyan is may mismatch kasi. The way we teach our students, medyo different the way the students are being assessed as they enter the profession. So, yun. Thank you very much again for this paper and congratulations. By the way, congratulations. I understand this is your thesis paper, no? So congratulations for successfully defending this paper, and I've mentioned nga namin doon sa GC ng committee, ang daming pwedeng maging researches dito sa paper mo. So
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much po, sir, for the appreciation of the study.
Thank you, Sir Munar and Sir Francis. At this point, we will now award our certificate to our fourth presenter. May we again request Mr. Alan Frank Silva, Madam Evelyn Corpus, and Dr. Florence Tugas to join us in the awarding. Let's also call on Sir Emmanuel Munar. Okay, so let's read. So the certificate reads, PICPA Foundation, and NACPAE present this certificate of presentation to Mr. Emmanuel M. Munar from St. Louis University for presenting a research paper titled Implementation of Outcomes-Based Education for Accountancy Program during the second Joint National Accountancy Research Summit and Conference on October 19 to 20, 2020. Given this 20th day of October 2020, signed President Lope Bato Jr., PICPA, Chairman Evelyn Corpus, PICPA Foundation, and the President Dr. Florence Tugas of NACPAE. Congratulations, Sir Munar.
Thank you po. Thank you very much.
We'd also like to extend our deepest gratitude and this certificate of appreciation to Mr. Francisco M. Caliwan Jr. from University of Santo Tomas for his invaluable contribution as reactor during the second Joint National Accountancy Research Summit and Conference, October 19 to 20, 2020. Given this 20th day of October 2020, signed by President Lope Bato Jr., PICPA, Madam Evelyn Corpus of PICPA Foundation Incorporated, and President Dr. Florence Tugas of NACPAE. Thank you, Sir Francis. We are blessed today or this afternoon to have such great presentations. Imagine having different topics, one from education, another from environment, and the other one is related to our profession, at the same time on regulations for the sustainability. Now, before we move forward to our management of learning, let us now open the floor for our forum. So may we request Professor Fe Ochotorena, DBA, Professor Christine June, DOE, and Professor Elvira D. Dacayo, PhD, to join us in our open forum. Doc LB, Doc Fe, and Miss Christine.
Yes, any question?
Ayan. So let's have the questions. We noted the questions provided for earlier during our morning session. So let's start with a question from Leonard Arenas. Okay, so the question reads, the trend in choosing the I-Turner topics have been viral in Facebook. Surface, wherein one school here in Central Luzon has accepted topics like bawal ang judgmental, coping strategies of bullied victim students. Sabi ko na bar B, misconception among male beauty care of students. In the field of accountancy, business, and management, is it okay to follow such trend in accepting or enhancing topics as chosen by the students? Perhaps we can ask the presenters earlier, or the resource speakers earlier, to comment on this question by one of our participants.
I'll answer it, Mark. I'll answer
Yes,
it.
Doctor. Yes po. Good afternoon.
What's the name of who's the What's the name?
Leonard Arenas po, the one who gave the question. Leonard po. Leonard po.
Leonard.
Opo.
In research writing, there is what we call tone of writing. Tone of writing. The tone of writing depends on the audience. So if the audience pertains to formal publication, formal presentation, the title should be formal also. But if your audience is simply leisurely or laid back, yung passive lang, yung easygoing lang, yung chill lang, that title would be acceptable. That's my point of view.
Thank you very much, Doctor.
Kasi that is for high school kasi, that is for high school.
Senior high po. Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Fe. May we hear from the other resource speakers a while ago? Miss Christine, what's your Miss LV, what's your take on this one, Dr. LV?
Well, I also agree with Doc Fe, but sometimes we have to look into also the eye-catching titles that would attract readers. Sometimes it may be informal, but if it would be able to catch the attention of people so that they will read that particular paper, then I believe we can guide our students to have these innovative titles and topics. We just have to guide them through that this is an academic endeavor. But sometimes eye-catching title really helps, as long as Ma'am Dr. Fe said a while ago, there should be an operational definition. Sometimes if you have been watching the online mass of Father Jerry Orbos, there are things that we have to align ourselves so that we can get the attention of our students, especially now that they are the millennials, or we'll call them, they have a different language. Now, we have to make research something that they will have to embrace, because if to them it is a nosebleed in terms of the language that we use, it would be a step-by-step way of making them realize that the research is interesting, and why not if we can guide them through an interesting title. That's my opinion.
Thank you, Doc LB. Let's hear from Professor Christine.
I'd say similarly as remarked, I think it all boils down to like what Dr. and Dr. Aldo said, the audience and the journal to which you plan to publish this with, if in case there is indeed a plan to publish. Understandably, different journals, they have their own set of rules as well as to what would qualify for publication. But if in case this is a research paper that is perhaps done on the academic level, and should they wish to publish it later, and if it does not abide by the rules of the publication, they could readily just revise it for as long as the concepts are there and then the thought is there. So that's it. Thanks, sir, Mark.
Thank you very much, dear resource speakers. So let's go to the next question provided for. This question came from Susana Go earlier. For a senior high school student, we have been trying to have them do just one paper that would already be the output for quantitative research, research project, and entrepreneurship subjects, which are taught in one semester. How possible is this? Any suggestions, especially during this pandemic? So they're asking if it's possible to have just one paper or output for these three courses: qualitative research, research project, and entrepreneurship. So I think let's have Doc Lacayo for this one?
Yes.
Yes,
I do believe that with the so many requirements on online learning right now, we can actually integrate all these requirements into one. Actually, we will be hitting two birds in one if we will be able to ask them to just have one particular topic in mind, but align them to the particular subject that they need it. In that way, it is more in-depth, okay? And actually, they have more literature review that they can use than to be spreading their wings too thinly and not being able to tackle the particular problem. So with the, I think this is also part of learning right now, where all the subjects could be integrated, where every topic can be used and it would be able to align with all other requirements. That way, our students, we always have to look at the point of view of our students, where they are. Because if we will be requiring them to have several papers in several topics, they will be spreading their wings too thinly and that their output would not be of quality. That's my take. Thank you, Sir Mark.
Thank you, Doc. LV, let's ask Professor Christine, what's your take on this three particular courses with one paper output? Is it feasible? So,
I really believe it is. It's a matter of collaboration, but then that would also take a lot of work from from the faculty side and the institution side to make sure that whatever subjects are should be integrated work seamlessly. We wanted to try that. Kaya lang minsan yung problem, especially if coming from a different department or coming from a different college, minsan mahirap to reach an agreement. But I would say it's definitely feasible. It's really just a matter of making sure that these things work seamlessly para hindi naman masyadong ma-pressure yung students.
thank you, Professor Christine. Let's ask Dr. Fe Ochotorena, your take po on this question.
Based on my understanding, there is a separate subject for quantitative research, and it is being applied to come up with a research project. So that is very feasible. While you are being taught of the concepts, you are applying it to prepare a research project. But there is a focus. It is focused on entrepreneurship. My question is it referring to the feasibility study wherein you have to come up with a business because it is entrepreneurship? Or it is something that they're going to do a project, let's say, the effect of COVID-19 to entrepreneur? That is a different thing. But it will need rigid guidance from the advisor or from the teacher. Now, she is asking for a, what is that? With regard to pandemic, di ba? Meron siyang
Yes po.
tinanong
Any
doon.
suggestion during this pandemic? What are the strategies po siguro on how this would be
Probably,
possible?
if you are really going to prepare a research focused on entrepreneurship, you have to limit the number of respondents. You have to limit especially that senior high school are not allowed to go outside. They are not allowed to go outside. So if they are after the effect of COVID-19 to entrepreneurs, probably they can have as their respondents those who are involved in online business. Let's say Lazada and then Shopee. If that is the case, because it is not clear in the question if it is after the feasibility study because it is entrepreneurship. Baka ito ay para sa business plan. Because feasibility study is also a form of research. Kaya lang medyo iba lang ng aspeto, di ba? Because there are also objectives in the preparation of FISIP. That's my point. Kung ganun ang that is feasible. Kaya lang you have to guide your students on how to approach the data collection method, which is the constraint of the pandemic. Okay, that's all.
Thank you very much, Dr. Fe Ochotorena. So we have a question here from Doc Jackie, our one of the members of the committee, who's also the chairman of this summit. No, so Doc Jackie is asking, the assumption is that accountancy research is a terminal paper where the learnings of students should have been comprehensive and instrumental to professional tasks, research included. Will it be advisable to have a statistician advisors, grammar editor as advisors as well? So perhaps we can ask Dr. for this one, as this related to this discussion also. And later, Miss Christine afterwards.
But it was mentioned, I think it's Christine, that you are not supposed to accept a topic which is not your expertise. Magkukulap sa paper kasi hindi mo siya expertise. Habang nagtuturo ka, nag-aaral ka. But if it is your expertise, even if you are an statistician, it is acceptable, di ba? But since that, if it is your, what you call this, expertise, you are an accountant, but statistics is not your forte, then you need an statistician. That means it is a collaborative work between the statistician and the one who is knowledgeable about the topic. Ang tanong ni Ma'am Jackie is,
will it be advisable to have statistician advisors, grammar editor as advisors?
If the accountant is also an statistician, walang
Very
problema, di ba?
advisable.
Walang problema. Hindi naman. Now, if purely lang naman siya na statistician, hindi niya expertise yung topic, let's say it's about accounting, hindi rin naman pwede kasi you know how many years did we take accounting, di ba, before we become a CPA? So hindi naman pwedeng ganun. Now, if there are researchers, let's say CPA, who are also knowledgeable about statistics, pwede naman din na hindi mo kailangan, especially if it is simple statistics. But remember, our students were able to pass all these subjects, di ba? Nadaanan nila yun eh. Because this is a capstone project.
Agree.
Kaya nga nasa terminal siya eh. You should have underwent all the different subjects so that you can apply it in doing research. So there are students who are knowledgeable about statistics. There are those who are knowledgeable about what do you call this? Grammar. May mga ganyan eh. That's why we do it in a context of a research group pag sa undergrad. Because this is a collaboration, sharing of talents, sharing of the skills. May magaling sa English, may magaling sa math. So if it is a collaborative, pwede. Pero yung question niya nga, if it is possible that a statistician advisor, pwede naman siguro if he is also, yun nga, sagot ko.
Also an accountant.
An accountant and a mathematician. Pwede siguro.
Thank you very much, Doc. Let's also ask Professor Uy, what's your take on this one?
Okay, actually, nababasa ko rin kasi nag-comment din si Doc Pat, nag-reply si Doc Pat dun sa question ni Doc Jackie. And I would like to also agree to that kasi we have also to look at ano ba yung learning outcomes at saka ano ba yung expected graduate attributes of the students. When we talk kasi, for example, and are these, for example, we talk about statistics, are these also appropriately covered and delivered in the curriculum? Because it might be unfair for us to believe or to assume that dapat magaling yung students natin in statistics if, for example, yung input naman on statistics in the curriculum is not as much. So what we have, well, for our experience, what we would normally do is, again, we try to collaborate with the other departments or other colleges. So if, for example, we're talking about grammar or editing, for example, then we might wish to, come up with an agreement with the dean of the arts and sciences para yung students naman nila would try to look at the work of our students. And so in that manner, kasi I think the concern of Doc Jackie is also the cost. Kasi mahal. If you have a statistician and an editor. So I think there can be ways that we could somehow look at paano hindi siya masyadong gastos on the end of the students, and somehow, although sometimes it really takes a lot of patience to make this work. Kasi nga ibang department or ibang college yung kausap. But at the end, I really see no harm in having an expert statistician and an expert grammarian to look at the paper, to critique the paper, to help the paper, especially when it is about to be completed in concept.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Professor Christine. Just to add to their responses as well, I think it would be better if we also would, as program owners, no courses natin, we have, I think in CHED, we have our course accounting, statistics for accountancy students. So perhaps we can actually tailor the contents of the syllabus to fit or align it with the methods of research course, and probably offer it at the same time so that the students would also have or would have the same output for both research and statistics. Okay. So I think we have another question here. This is relevant also to our discussion. Sent earlier this morning by Leonard as well. Good morning po. In the section interpretation of the results, our beautiful speaker said that we need to interrelate the results with existing literature. What if there is no existing literature? Can we use feedback from our respondents instead? So I think this is a question directed to Doc Pe yata ito for the literature.
Sige, ako na lang din. Literature review supposedly must be done in order to identify the gap. So I would like to ask the participant that does it mean that from the very start, he was not able to establish the gap? So assuming that when he did the review or the literature review, he did not find any related literature. So that means, para sa kanya, talagang malaki yung gap kasi wala siya nakita di ba? So there is a blank spot. My suggestion sana is for him to to explore his search option by including more keywords to ensure that he absolutely capture the hidden literature. Baka kasi hindi na-explore lahat yung mga keywords. Another is probably he can continue with the research even without the literature. And then after that, he can search again because probably there might be no published related literature during the time nung mag-research siya. Or probably there are related literature but unpublished. Kaya it is hidden. So hindi niya nakita. There is also another way of searching through seeking the results from the hypothesis. Once you have tested your hypothesis, based on that results, you can check again your review of related literature whether those patterns of results are already established. Baka may makita ka. Hindi base sa objective mo, but based on the results of your hypothesis. But if after all of those have been done and the search is still futile, then probably he is the pioneer in that new vista of knowledge. And that is being the first, of course, that is a huge contribution to the field. And at the same time, that is an inviolable position. Nakakaingit naman, di ba? Oh. In other words, his work will be the point of reference for all future work. Kung wala talaga. Pero he has to exert all the efforts. Kasi usually naman kasi, there are related literature. There is no original. Baka lang wala lang nakapublish. Kasi meron tayong textbook. I presume na kahit isa doon may makikita. Even teen literature. That's my point. Okay?
Thank you very much. So, Doc Pe, I was referring to a seminal study perhaps, no, or a grounded theory, if there is really no literature for that, right? So, it's actually, the downside there is it's actually hard to defend in case you all have a defense for that. So, let's take a look at our Q&A button. We have here a question from Melvin Sarsale. What delineate accounting research topics from business research topics? So this is very interesting. I think we can ask Doc LV for this one.
Okay. Actually, there is a very thin line because accounting is actually business, no? But we can actually be guided with the 5 research agenda as suggested by NACPAE. Okay, so we have accounting education, financial reporting, management advisory, management services, taxation, auditing. Okay, so actually there are so many research being conducted in the marketing part, in economics, in finance part. So we can actually make it a point to focus on the 5 areas that we have that is aligned in the accountancy research, so that we will actually be giving them, and the other programs, the needed topics that they have to concentrate on, while us in the accountancy, we can concentrate on the 5 areas that have been identified. That way, we are not if it is a marketing area of study, then we can as well tell them, maybe you can concentrate more on financial reporting, okay, so that we can actually apply all the academic subjects that we have, because research is the capstone. So if we look more of topics like marketing or economics, then we might not be able, pwede siguro sa management services, kasi malaki ang lawak nun. Pero we can actually guide our students to look into topics that would help them in the board exam, will help them in their future careers, so that it would really be disciplinal in nature, as well as very applicable in their particular courses. Thank you.
Thank you, Doc LV. I definitely agree with that. As what Dr. Ederlin said yesterday, you build your expertise, your research based on the topics that you are teaching. So if the student would want to pursue a career in this particular area, perhaps he can explore research agenda related to that. And thank you po, Doc LV. We go to our next question. This one came from Floresita Cortez. It says, what words of wisdom could you give to students with regards to critiquing and constructive criticism? Okay, sometimes these are reasons for students to be discouraged in pursuing their paper. So I would like to throw this question to, or ask this question to Miss Christine, because earlier I recalled she has that illustration about the panda, the cat, and the dog. Ayan. So what words of wisdom can you give to our students? Kasi kanina teacher yung binigyan niya ng words of wisdom. What about for students?
Eh talaga, Sir Mark. Na-pressure ako dun na. Wala pa naman akong picture ngayon. Actually kasi yung mga students natin, takot talaga yan sa research. Kahit tayo nga, takot tayo, di ba? So I think before I go to the words of wisdom for the students, I think I have to appeal first to the research advisor and the panelists. Because minsan kasi, it's not just the message, but it's how you get the message across. Kaya nga, very important yung sabi ni Doc LV kanina na when you sit as a member of the panel and you make, for example, a critique or you make a comment, you have to at least balance it out with a suggestion so that hindi naman masyadong ma-feel ng students na lost sila. They do not know what to do afterwards. Na mali talaga yung ginawa nila and there's no coming back from it. But since the question is for the students and what words of wisdom we could give to the students, basically it's really just a matter of understanding that the panelists are there to help you and that the research advisor is there to help you as well. Kasi minsan when they look at us, when we sit in the panel, for example, what they see are monsters trying to discredit their entire work. When I have my advices, I always tell them, remember, you know your paper best. Kasi kayo naman yung gumawa ng research. You were there in every step, and all of these questions and these recommendations, they are just there to help you improve the paper, to make the paper stand against whatever criticisms there are. And at the end of the day, whatever makes your paper better will also make you better. Not just in terms of researchers, but also in terms of, being a human being who would be willing to accept criticisms that are being thrown at them. But then again, Sir Mark, like I said, very important kasi yung role ng panelist and ng advisor as to how they communicate. Para naman hindi matakot, hindi maging scared puppy yung ating mga research mentees at advisees. So, ayan po, Sir Mark.
Thank you very much, Professor Christine, for that. We have your last question, but I think I'll be the one to provide information for this one. No? So when can we see a list of various research papers on accounting so that we may not research on the same topic? So for this one, I think we can go to the website of NACPAE. That's www.nacpae.com for papers presented in NACPAE and also for the dividends. We also encourage you to browse in the future. We are working on it. We'll have a digital journal also for the PICPA, our profession itself. We'll have our own journal, which is on its way. So it's entitled PICPA Journal of Accounting Theory and Practice. So we hope that these papers presented during the summit could also form part of that particular paper. So also in the Philippine context, some schools would also subscribe to, for international papers, some schools would also subscribe to the so-called journal databases. So you can also try that. It would somehow cost you something. It's for the institution to consider as well. So we also have a PICPA research journal that was previously published. So you can also check on those copies of the publication, which we hope will soon be also incorporated online via our PICPA website. Okay, so on the second part of the question, so that we may not research on the same topic, actually in research, we highly encourage people to research on the same topic because it provides us, not the same topic, but on the same interest because it provides us somehow similar support, especially if you are doing empirical studies. The more papers about this one, the more studies, this will actually fill in the gap that was already existing. So yun nga, unless sabi nga ni Doc Fe, the results are already saturated, meaning kahit di mo na siya i-research, given na siya. So yan po. So let's ask final words or words from our resource speakers. Siguro we can start with Doc LV, then Miss Christine and Doc Fe. So Miss LV, Doc LV, any final message to our students, presenters, administrators, PICPA and PICPA Incorporated, Foundation Incorporated, and all the people watching to us right now?
Okay, thank you, Sir Mark. So my last word is actually embracing research is a personal choice. And even if you have attended so many seminars or many webinars and conferences, it would not really help you if you don't really embrace that research would really help you not only for your personal growth, but also for your career as well. And being a true academician, it is but our job and our duty to be able to uplift and help other people as well to embrace that research. Kasi ganito po yan, kapag tayo mismo love natin mag-research, nag-emanate din na ang ating mga students would also embrace and love research. So that's my take on this matter, and I hope that we have been able to convince our accounting faculty to embrace research so that our students would also embrace it. Thank you.
Thank you very much po, Dr. LB Dacayo from St. Louis University. Let's now call on Professor June, Christine June Uy.
Thank you, Sir Mark. Actually, ako naman coming from a point of a former research-averse person. Ayoko talagang mag-research. And I think what made me a research convert was when I was forced by the school to be really part of a core committee of researchers. So parang I had no choice. So I think as a final word, especially to those scared puppies out there, yung answer kanina ay scared puppies, don't fight it. Don't fight it kasi andyan na yan eh. It's required of us. And so I think the best way that just go with whatever is required, don't fight it, try to learn as much as you can, and as much as possible remove all of the prior biases you have against research. Kasi yan talaga yung number one that is able to stop us. The idea that it is kapoy, the idea na nakakapagod siya, the idea that it takes so much of our time, na kailangan magaling ka sa statistics, approach research with an open mind, and then hopefully you will also be a research convert like myself and like many of the people that I also know. So we can do this today. Ano sana yung original theme natin kasi, Sir Mark, di ba? Together today. So yun sana yung gusto kong pang last words kaya tinanggal natin Pero sasabihin ko na lang, let's all be research converts together today. Thank you, Sir Mark. Sir Mark, nakamute pa po kayo, Sir Mark.
Ay, sorry, yan. Thank you very much, Professor Christine June Uy from University of San Jose Recoletos. So that was actually our team when we had this second, no? Ito talaga yung team natin kasi this was Madam Evelyn natatawa, no? Ito hindi kasi natuloy ito last year kasi last year pa to during the previous year. So ayun. So together we'll do research, sabi nga ni Professor Christine Uy. And then for our last resource speaker, let's call on Professor Fe or Dr. Fe Ochotorena for her message, no, to everyone.
For me, doing research actually gives pride to the individual, especially in our program that only few can do research. That is what I stated in my speech, diba, in my talk, that only a handful of accountants can do research. That's why even if they're saying that they are good in teaching this particular subject, pagdating sa research, panalo ka. Kasi you are the only one. Hindi naman sa pagyayabang. Dahil in our program, I'm the only one who is doing research. So there is pride in doing research. And another thing, wala kang fear. Nung dumating yung K-12, maraming natakot para mawalan ng load. Pero ako, chill lang kasi wala akong kalaban sa load. Kasi mag-isa lang ako nag-handle na research at saka ng feasibility study. So that is one of the advantages of knowing how to do research. There are also advantages in terms of the perception of the students. Kasi kita nila, you are, nag-i-stand out ka sa department in terms of research. Lahat ng bata sa'yo lang lumalapit. But that is not my point because we belong to one institute, Business Administration and Accounting Department. But in our case, in the case of Business Administration, majority of the faculty are research faculty. They know how to do research. So it is very disappointing that on the part of an accountant, sasabihin nila magaling lang sa numbers, but they do not know how to do research. I was challenged. At sana lang lahat ng kasama ko and even all the accounting teachers would be challenged to become researchers. You must know how to do research. It was mentioned also by Christine that doing research must start from the professor, from the teacher, because you cannot give what you do not have. Oo, you can handle research, why not? Because there is no specific way. Pero sabay kayo mag-aaral ng bata. Pag nagkataon, hindi siya maniniwala sa iyo na magaling kang teacher sa research kung hindi ka naman nakakagawa ng research, di ba? If you are an part of the administration and you are trying to insist your faculty to do research, but you yourself do not know how to do research, susundin ka ba? So it must be tone of the top. Magsimula tayo sa taas, mula sa dean, marunong gumawa ng research, bago mo kulitin yung mga nasa baba mo na gumawa ng research. So it should be, in other words, dapat magsimula to sa university. Should be the call of the university. So that everyone, wala namang magagawa yan, di ba? Wala namang magagawa yan kapag ka diniktahan mo na lahat. Because this is part of your duty. Di ba? Tatlo nga yan mentioned by Dr. Edralin. Community service, research, and teaching. But we have to accept the fact that all universities, even University of the Philippines and even BLSU, it is a teaching university. Mas lamang pa rin. But we are trying to cope up so that we can be globally competitive by doing research. And probably, NACPA, PICPA, and PICPA Foundation would be the instrument to encourage every accounting teachers to become researchers, to become research teachers towards a better normal. That's all.
Thank you
Naisingit
very
ko pa rin
much.
yung topic ko.
Thank you very much, Dr. Fe Ochotorena from the Far Eastern University. I definitely agree with that. My observation personally, actually, I'm really happy with the way NACPA is doing in terms of research. Kasi po, in the past, when we have our conferences, we just meet and we talk. Sa ibang bansa po kasi, in the different universities, when we talk about conferences, it's about paper presentation. That's why, in our upcoming MAYAPIC and ATC, will have a paper presentation, will be provided with opportunities to have your papers presented. And so that's one way also of encouraging our faculty members. Okay? So thank you very much, dear resource speakers. No? Salamat po. So we'll now proceed to our management of learning for this afternoon. So many things have been said already. Ayan. And it's actually a hard task. No? One is because ako yung nasa dulo na, no? Pauwi na yung mga tao. Ayan. And the other one is information overload na. So I'll just keep my management of learning simple and quick. No? First, let's just have a recap of what transpired yesterday. So we had Dr. Noe's message about the competency framework, focusing on the professional organization and the sector. So we were informed about the role of the different organizations or sectors in monitoring the competencies of our professionals. So he also provided there that the things that we need to do on how to monitor competencies within our particular subsector or sector, like public practice, commerce and industry, government and education. That's the macro level. Now, the second presenter yesterday provided us insights about doing research in the accountancy profession. She even cited some similar studies and prolific authors or persons in accounting. And she touched three main ideas or items which I quote. One is the trifocal function, again, of our educational sector. So in the Philippines, we have to break that particular paradigm or particular thinking that we only exist to teach. So again, the focus of a university is to teach, to provide research, to provide information to other people as well, and to provide also support or assistance to the community, so in the form of community engagement. Second thing is the role of administrators. Okay, so today we discuss actually the role of the faculty, but yesterday we discussed the role of administrators. Sabi nga kanina, no, the toning from the top. Okay, so the research must come from the top. It must be provided for with support. We cannot expect output from faculty members if we don't allow them the time and the resource. We don't provide them the resources for them to produce. Ayan. And also we have here we have to consider also in this particular item the recommendations provided for by our speaker yesterday, Doc Ed Relin, no? Very tangible recommendation, which we will actually discuss, no, when we have our next meeting for the committee. All right, for the earlier discussion this morning, we had the roles of the teacher or the roles of the faculty. Three personas. First person is in the person of a teacher, okay, or a professor, guiding students on how to prepare research papers, how to prepare proposal. The next one is the role of the advisor on how to lead the students and how to manage the group and how to choose topic and deliver the results expected. And yun nga, sabi nga ni Prof. Christine kanina, no, for us to have that particular confidence in accepting advices based on our line of expertise. And the last speaker provided us information on strategies on how to do thesis paneling. What are the things that we need to do and the roles of a panel member. So again, the purpose is basically to help not not to provide criticisms, no, to the work of the student or the student. Okay. So for the papers presented a while ago or earlier, we had a paper about the environment, the El Nino, presented by Dr. Naranjo. So this provides us additional insight on the effects of these things, economic things affecting our financial performance and position as well in the market. We also had a discussion earlier about CPD from Ms. Calixto of De La Salle University, which geared towards regulations, no, particularly on the BOA, Board of Accountancy, and the CPD law, which can be used as input also in the review of the existing law, and also for the CPD or Professional Development Committee of PICPA. We also had a paper earlier provided or presented to us by Mr. Rarang related to sustainability, though this one touches the concept about reporting, which is relevant not only to SEC, but also to all corporations. Because in one seminar that I attended, actually, for sustainability, we have attorney, the commissioner of the SEC provided there that in the long run, they will require all entities, including non-PLCs or publicly listed corporations, to submit sustainability reports. So that is their target. Okay, so it would be interesting to know this one, and this is also one of the hot topics or interest that was provided yesterday by Doc Edrelin. And last but not the least, we have our OBE study or research earlier conducted related to SHED implementation, the level of implementation in the accountancy program. So this one, I strongly suggest that we take a look at this paper and we try also to apply this in our individual institutions or related institutions. So for us to have evidence also that could be used as input by SHED, so that schools, especially those who are not yet or below the which has low level of implementation of this OBE, because some are still geared towards the CIPALE or the Certified Public Accountant License Examination. So we will not just focus on that, but we focus more on the outcomes needed by our students, specifically related to the talk of Doc Noe yesterday also about CPD and IPD. Now, these are baseline studies that are presented to us. This opened our eyes actually, to the reality that one, we can actually really prepare good research papers as accounting teachers, or as accounting students, and as accounting professionals. Second thing that this research has provided us, this summit has provided us, is that there is support that is waiting for us. PICPA, NACPAE, and PICPA Foundation expressed their support through this seminar, and they are more than willing to actually help us in our subsequent projects. So we just have to ask our organization for this one, so that they could also identify ways. Kasi it's also important for them to know the ways on how they can actually support faculty members. And this also these researches or presentations provided also gaps that needs to be filled, especially in the area of research, and these papers are key inputs for our administrators. So the last thing that I would like to highlight is that the research of this this paper or this summit is actually geared towards our educational system. That we as educators should really focus our attention on doing research. Now, before we go to the last part of this program, let me just provide you some insights. Let me just share with you the upcoming and existing or ongoing projects of the PICPA and PICPA Foundation Research and Development Committee. So the first one is we have actually an existing research activities with practitioners. So we are partnering right now with industry practitioners who are members of the committee to come up with research papers. Okay, so para po hindi lang kami invite ng presenters, at we also as members of the committee would produce papers that will represent also the profession. Ayan. So we are actually doing this partnership, academe, co-authorship with practitioners, most likely partners of auditing firms and private companies, to come up with research outputs that would benefit the entities, as well as it will also increase our publication in terms of our number of publications in the Philippines. Next would be our PICPA Journal of Accounting Theory and Practice. So we are working on or PICPA and PICPA Foundation is actually working on this one, having a journal, digital journal on accounting profession. So this one is specifically for PICPA, and we hope that all related accounting journals or studies, especially professionals or CPAs, would be published in this journal. We also are to provide a research portal in the PICPA website. So this one is something that is in transit also. So good news for all those members in good standing of PICPA, because you will have unlimited access to the journals that will be uploaded in the PICPA website. Now that is on the sector, on the national level. Let's go to the sectoral level on education. So the committee is still providing us ongoing projects, year-round projects on continuing research and training. So this will not be our last webinar for research. The committee is actually coming up with a series of webinars that could be beneficial to all parties involved in research or who are interested in research. We'll also have our third research summit, right? So hindi pa tapos yung second, meron ng third. Ayan. So again, as what we have discussed or said a while ago, this was for the previous year pa, so carried forward because of the pandemic. But rest assured that we will have another summit. So for those who were inspired by our presenters and by our resource speakers, you are encouraged, highly encouraged, no, to submit your papers to our third research summit, which will commence sometime in March 2021. Okay, you will also submit your papers to the upcoming MAYATIC of NACPAE. So just visit the NACPAE website or Facebook group for the details of the call for papers. And last but not the least, this is for the education or the teachers of accounting research. The committee will come up with a digital research manual on its way to be released, targeted this February 2021. So this will be distributed to higher educational institutions or teachers who are to handle research. So this includes also tips and techniques on how to do or to teach research in this particular setting. Okay. So at this point, may we ask you to fill out the evaluation form. Again, the evaluation form is a requirement for you to have your certificate of attendance. The link can be found in the chat box. Alternatively, by clicking the Leave Webinar, you will be directed to the evaluation link. We hope you were able to catch all the necessary information you need from this webinar. May we also invite you to please visit and like our PICPA National FB page and our National Association of CPAs in Education Facebook group, and regularly check it for webinar schedules and other important announcements. And lastly, to all CPAs, please enroll in PICPA's event box so that you will get notified of the PICPA's news, events, webinars, conferences, and other PICPA activities. Please use only one email account when you enroll in this particular events. Ladies and gentlemen, we would like to close this event on a note of gratitude to all people who made this activity possible. Special thanks to the unwavering support of our PICPA National President, Mr. Lope Bato Jr., our PICPA Foundation Chairman, Madam Evelyn Corpus, and our NACPAE President, Dr. Florence C. Tugas. Once again, thank you very much for joining this event. Stay safe and healthy, and God bless us all. On behalf of the producers and organizers of this webinar, this is your Master of Ceremonies, Mr. Mark Vincent Bendo, now signing off.